Chapter 1916. But even after midnight, the rich musician still couldn't find a suitable partner. His inspiration was interrupted by Charlotte's nervous performance, and naturally, he couldn't recover. Some musicians were also the nervous type. Most of their ideas were wild, sudden, and even reckless. Wolfgang was planning to do something to stimulate his inspiration. Play the first movement. On the deck of the cruise ship, 10 rings made of special gems shone brightly, as if there were strings in the air. Wolfgang listened to something, then gently moved his fingers. On the calm sea surface, there were suddenly waves. They slowly moved toward the cruise ship from a distance, growing bigger and bigger until they became a large wave, directly hitting the hull. The luxurious cruise ship couldn't help but shake at this time. But this didn't alarm the tourists on the cruise ship. It was common to encounter some turbulence at sea. This was a cruise ship sailing around the world. Some of the tourists had even spent more than half a year on a cruise ship and had long been accustomed to it. But this night, the waves seemed to be more intense. Shaking, unknowingly, it had become a vibration to the extent that the passengers couldn't stand still. Passengers, please rest assured, we are passing through an undercurrent area, and we will pass through soon. Please try to stay in a safe place and steady yourself. The radio on the cruise ship was started to calm the wandering souls. However, the radio didn't have any effect because the more violent vibrations that accompanied it had made the passengers doubt the authenticity of the radio broadcast. Then, when the first scream was heard, people found that at this time, the hull was tilting visibly at this time, and the tilting was still serious. At this time, a huge wave appeared at the back of the cruise ship, like a huge wall falling from the sky. It looked like the cruise ship was going to fall directly into the water. How can this be? The captain had been in the business for 30 or 40 years and had seen countless storms and waves, but the moment of this monstrous wave, the veteran captain only had time to pick up the microphone in his hand and said his last words. "Thank God you and I met on this cruise ship. I'm very happy to see everyone's recognition of the work of the crew for more than 160 days. Pray, at the moment of death." The hull of the ship was tilting at a 90-degree angle, and a large number of tourists were thrown directly into the murky and dark sea. The musician on the deck played faster and faster, as if he was twitching. Wolfgang's face was full of excitement and fanaticism. "What are you doing?" Charlot, who was holding a black umbrella, and Gong Fanxing, the female devil of Shenzhou, appeared in front of Wolfgang almost at the same time and spoke in unison. "Shu, at such a perfect moment, please allow me to not respond to the hearts of the two ladies." He put his finger to his lips as he spoke softly, revealing his pearly white teeth. Gong Fanxing looked at the people who were constantly being thrown into the sea or running for their lives in despair. She couldn't help but frown. Was it too much? Perhaps. However, Wolfgang, who caused this disaster, was even more terrible. Those strings hidden in the air, each of them contained a terrible power. She didn't intend to continue watching. She gently stepped on the soles of her feet and directly soared into the sky. She supported her body to stay in the air with her incomparably vigorous, true power. Charlotte waved her hand and stepped on a strange crow, slowly flying up as well. Whirlpool. In the murky sea, there was a huge and terrible whirlpool at this moment. Austin House was like a person who fell into a quagmire. The completely tilted hull was being swallowed by the whirlpool little by little. On the sea, Wolfgang's crazy laughter could actually cover the desperate screams of all the people on the ship. More, a little more intense. Intense. Ha 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 ha. Madman. Gong Fanxing shook her head. In the end, she couldn't continue watching and turned her gaze away. At this moment, Charlotte suddenly stretched out her hand and grabbed. In the sea, many souls roaring in despair suddenly rushed out and were sucked into her palm. "Don't waste them." Gong Fanxing only heard Charlotte said so softly. She could feel that Wolfgang and Charlotte were not ordinary people along the way, but it was the first time that she saw the horror of these two people. Compared to herself, the name of the devil seemed more like these two guys. But on the high seas, who could stop such an unexpected disaster? The sea had been crazily closed into the cabin. In the space at the bottom of the cruise ship, the water had flooded all the roads. The crew who worked here were now in despair, pale and powerless, waiting for the arrival of death. At this time, in the power room, where the water was leaking everywhere, several crew members who managed to hide here with great difficulty were frightened. Suddenly, a crew member rushed to an engine with a crowbar. "What do you want to do? I've seen an old blueprint of this place. There seems to be an empty space under the floor. It's directly connected to an escape, but I don't know what's going on inside, but it's better than being trapped here." Hearing this, the crew members who had no way to escape instantly rushed up together. They worked together and soon pried open the floor. After preying open the floor, there was a round iron door at the end of the floor. The word danger was written on the iron door. However, the door hidden under the floor had given these desperate people hope to survive. At this time, they didn't care whether it was dangerous or not. Even if there was something with radiation or highly toxic, it was better than directly drowning here. The desperate crew members worked together again and finally succeeded in opening the iron door under the force of violence. A straight passage leading to the bottom with stairs made of iron frames appeared. "We have a chance. There is indeed a way here." They excitedly jumped into the vertical passage leading to the lower level of the cabin. It was not very deep. It wasn't a big space, but it wasn't easy to squeeze such a space under the engine room of the cruise ship. Everyone here was a veteran of the cruise ship, but they had never heard of such a secret place on the cruise ship. "I see. There's indeed a door here. It should be able to go out. There is no water on the floor here, and the water hasn't reached here yet. There's also a button here. It may be a control switch, but it seems to require a password and fingerprint. It's over. We don't have the authority to open it. It's already at this time. Do you still care about this?" In order to survive, people desperately picked up crowbars and frantically smashed the control system here. They even pried open the floor here to find the buried circuit and tear it off. Fast and crazy. The electronic instruments flashed with bursts of sparks. The only door in the secret space finally reacted at this time. It slowly turned from top to bottom. A burst of cold mist began to spread in this secret space as the door turned down, but the crew members didn't see the way behind the door at this moment. There was no way. On the overturned door panel, there was only a huge cylindrical jar the size of a door panel. They were suddenly stunned by the fact that there was no way in front of them. The air was dead silent. "There's no way. Only a broken jar. Suddenly, a burly man who was on the verge of collapse picked up the crowbar in his hand and began to smash the huge jar as if he had gone mad. This broken thing. Perhaps in the process of smashing, something happened. The jar suddenly popped out of the inner layer. Everyone was startled. The inner layer that popped out instantly released a horrible cold air and suddenly frosted everyone's face. The air temperature suddenly dropped a lot. And in the inner layer, there was a naked man nearly 2 meters tall. "It's a corpse." However, it was too late for these crew members to panic because the continuous release of cold air from the jar began to frost the surroundings. "My feet." The frost climbed along their bodies and completely froze them. In the end, the seawater still poured into this place, but it was quickly frozen into ice, completely freezing this place. Austin House finally disappeared in the whirlpool of the sea. No one survived. It took a long time for the sea to gradually calm down. Wolfgang's hands slowly dropped down and sighed, but his brows slightly frowned, as if he wasn't very satisfied. What a pity. Wolfgang shook his head at this time. If there were Rose and Jack in this disaster, there would be a soul-stirring story. "Wolfgang, you're so happy. But the key is, do we have to fly from the sea to the land?" Charlotte, who was holding a black umbrella, slowly floated down at this time. "I hate to see the sunrise on the sea. Anyway, it's not far, right?" Wolfgang smiled slightly. "Let's ride the sea breeze and paddle." Hearing this, Gongfanching suddenly had the idea of getting away from these two mysterious guys. A strong aura burst out from her body and directly rushed to the distance in the direction of the land of Kelowna. "Ah, Miss Gong, Please wait for me. Wolfgang at this time, followed behind Gong, faunching leisurely, as if he was taking a stroll in the courtyard. Charlotte shook her head. She subconsciously looked at the turbid sea. I feel it, it's a bad omen. But because her divination had always been in the opposite direction, Charlotte immediately shook her head, as if she was disappointed and happy. It's probably a good sign. She also followed Wolfgang's pace unhurriedly. She wanted to keep going to the east to find her Lucifer, her king. This night, this forbidden city received many people from different places. But the residents living in the city didn't know this. Since half a month ago, a curfew had been implemented here. After 8 o'clock in the evening, people were no longer allowed to go out on the street. There were some troublemakers who still went out before the decree was issued, and the next day, they were reported to have been arrested. For a journalist, going back early was a very luxurious thing. At 6:30 in the evening, Annie Run and Lizzie had already returned downstairs of the family master's building. Rin Xiling seemed to be in a good mood, although she still had some small conflicts with the authority outside the summit meeting venue more than an hour ago. But Lizzie was fine after all, wasn't she? As for Annie Run, she was just a citizen. How could she confront such a huge organization like the authority? Relying on the word brave written on her chest? It was impossible. She still wanted to wait until the day when she had many children and grandchildren. Speaking of which, Lizzie, Auntie Rin didn't go upstairs immediately. Instead, she pulled Lizzie aside and asked mysteriously, "Do you still have the tonic pill that you brought from your hometown last time? Sister Run, you haven't given up yet? If I don't succeed, I won't die in peace." "No more." Lizzie shook her head and immediately asked tentatively, "Why don't you go to the pharmacy over there to get some blue pills? That thing is harmful to the body. My son is still young." Annie knocked Lizzie's head vigorously. She felt so wronged, and her tears seemed to be squeezed out. Is the tonic pill not harmful to the body? And forget it. I will go downstairs to the neighbor's house to get some leeks. Annie didn't give up and continued to talk. Your neighbor's house also grows leeks? Lizzie blinked curiously. Auntie Run was about to make a speech, but at this time, her eyes suddenly widened, and her face showed a touch of surprise. It was a look of surprise. Lizzie subconsciously turned around and looked. A man wearing sunglasses and a trench coat was walking toward them at this time. The man had a faint smile on his face, and the tone of his walking seemed to be a guy who practiced some fighting. "I heard you say you want to get leeks from afar." The man came to front of Annie Run, and Lizzie took off his sunglasses and chuckled. "Why, which unlucky guy are you going to get leeks from?" "Yi Yan!" Auntie Rin screamed at this time, then rushed forward without saying a word, and hugged the tall and thin man in a trench coat. "When did you come back? Let me have a good look." "I just got off the plane." The man, Yi Yan, smiled slightly at this time. "I plan to come to your house for a meal. Do you mind?" "I don't mind," Auntie Rin said excitedly at this time. Then she pressed her hands on Lizzie's shoulders and pushed her out. "Even if you want to sleep with this girl, I have no objection." "And Lizzie pointed to herself subconsciously. "Me? What's the situation?" Chapter 1917. This should be one of the few lively days in this family in recent years, Rin Xiling thought. There was a tenant who was a foodie, Lizzie. There was an old friend with whom they had a deep friendship, Yi Yan. Of course, there was no lack of a sweetheart and a more precious girlfriend. There were not many people, but the dining table was just enough to fill up, and the table was full of food. It was quite deserted outside because the curfew had already started, but the room was full of warm lights. There were also laughter. In fact, Rin Xiling was a person who loved to cry very much. Once, she didn't remember how long it had been since she last cried. While eating, Auntie Rin's eyes became misty. She said she didn't know what happened to her. It must be because of the bad guy. Yi Yan suddenly appeared. Yi Yan cried out that he was wronged. Auntie Rin said it was him. This guy was used to be a playboy, and he often made the girls around him cry. It was him. Yi Yan didn't say anything. He just looked at the crowd and drank 3 glasses of wine as punishment. Then he forced Luo Qiu to drink another 3 glasses of wine. He said that he had found a pretty good girlfriend. As an uncle, he was overjoyed. He was really happy. Li Zi watched Annie run and Yi Yin chatting on the table. Her main task was to eliminate the food on the table. In fact, more than half of the food had already fallen into her stomach. As for the rest, it probably wouldn't take long. The reason why she ate so willfully was that she knew that the people here didn't treat her as a stranger. They didn't discuss any of the topics that people talked about most at present: the extraordinary society, the revival of aura. They only treated this meal as a common meal. A real common meal. They talked about a lot of things in the past. No, I can't drink anymore. I'll drink this glass. You guys can do whatever you want. She suddenly stood up, but she had to hold the table. She raised the glass in her hand again. Her face was red, and her eyes were blurred. But soon she directly lay on the table and fell asleep. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening. In fact, it was time to end. I have a question. Lizzie had licked the third plate clean. She was addicted to Miss Yuye's cooking. Lizzie even felt that as long as the blonde cook was around, she would be unable to walk. What is it? Yian couldn't help but curiously look at this little girl. It was the first time he saw a girl who could eat so much. She was really a talent. He didn't know where Rin Xiling picked up such an interesting little girl. It's already curfew time. Lizzie blinked and said, "All the buses and vehicles in the city have stopped. What are you going to do?" "All of you." Of course. He was referring to Yi Yin and Yu Yi. "If you don't mind, you can stay here tonight." Boss Luo looked at Yi Yin and said with a smile, "I'll tidy up a room for you." Yi Yin was about to speak, but Annie Run, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly raised her face that was getting redder and redder. She even went into a drunken frenzy and grabbed the servant girl who was cleaning up the table. "Why are you sleeping? I want to sleep with you. I want to sleep with you." Annie Ren directly lay on Miss Maid's chest and rubbed coquettishly. "Oh." Lizzie's eyes lit up instantly. Miss Maid didn't seem to have a good way to deal with this situation. It seemed that she could only let it go like this, and murmured, "This is really difficult. I'll take her into the room first." Anyway, Boss Luo thought for a while and said. Miss Maid suddenly smiled and said, "If you don't mind, let me take care of her tonight." Boss Luo looked at her in surprise. After reading her eyes, he smiled slightly. "Then I'll trouble you. In this case." Yian smiled and said, "Little Luo Chio, are you interested in sleeping with Uncle tonight?" "Oh." Lizzie's expression lit up again. "We haven't had a good chat for a long time." Yian smiled slightly. "I'm going to be busy soon. It's estimated that we won't be able to meet for a long time." "Why? Don't you like an old man?" "Of course not." Luochio shook his head. The matter was decided in this way, so there was only Lizzie left. She looked at the mess in the room again with an "oh" sound and raised her hands high. "Oh, no one sleeps with Lizzie. I sleep by myself. There's still no change here." Yian looked at the room. "You've been fond of cleanliness since you were a child." The only feeling was that everything seemed to have a place where it should be. The kind of tidiness that would make people extremely uncomfortable if it was messy. "I just came back." Luochio smiled. "I haven't lived here for a long time, and this room hasn't been cleaned up." "You've changed," Ian suddenly said. Luochio looked at him. Ian smiled. "You're more cheerful than before, which is a good thing. And you found a girlfriend, which is even better." Luochio smiled. "You wouldn't be the boss tonight." "What about Uncle Yi? Are you still alone? Or do you plan to be alone all the time?" "If you're single for a long time, you'll find everything beautiful." Yi Yin joked. "You'll find that there are too many good-looking women in the world, and you can't chase them all. Instead, you'll get a lot of romantic debts." So, the conclusion is, of course, it's more comfortable to be alone. But there seemed to be an old friend in his eyes. Luochio went out and poured a cup of warm water for Yi Yin. There was no one outside the room, and they all returned to their own rooms. "In fact, you're more like your mother." Yi Yin smiled. "If you're like your father, you don't know how to take care of others. He needs others to take care of him more. Of course, he's really busy with work." Luochio smiled and didn't say anything. Speaking of taking care of others, perhaps he was the one who was always taken care of. "Aren't you curious why I suddenly came back?" Yian held the cup between his hands and slowly turned it back and forth. "Are you going to say it, Uncle Yi?" Yian smiled and shook his head. "We're not talking about work tonight." "So, it was because of work. By the way," Yian said, Do you still have a saxophone I gave you? Wait for me. Boss Luo nodded and took out the instrument from the cabinet. She had seen this messy room more than once. Ren Xiling's room. When she saw Ren Xiling for the first time, her master was still ignorant and asked her to solve the problem of Ren Xiling seeing something she shouldn't see. At that time, she was curious about the woman who lived with her master. Even after inheriting the shop, her master still insisted on coming back at night to take care of her. She buried this curiosity in the bottom of her heart. She only pieced together the true image of Ren Xiling bit by bit every time her master mentioned her and in the limited number of times they met. Not everyone could put their hands on her shoulders, not everyone could touch her intimately, and not everyone could do unscrupulous things to her body. But Ren Xiling could. She couldn't even find a reason to refuse. Yi sat quietly at the bedside and looked at Auntie Run, who had changed into pajamas. She could even find 1,000 places with such an indecent sleeping posture. But so what? Miss Ren, thank you for taking care of my master and loving him before I met him. Miss Maid gently covered Ren Xiling with a quilt. She didn't need to sleep, so it was okay to sit all the time. She planned to return to the shop directly and appear again when she needed it. But she seemed to have underestimated the horror of a drunk woman. Miss Maid, who had just covered herself with the quilt, suffered an unprecedented attack. Aunt Ren suddenly stretched out her hand and directly grabbed Miss Maid's wrist. Miss Maid was surprised at first. Her body was then pulled onto the bed and rolled. Auntie Ren skillfully wrapped herself around Miss Maid's body like an octopus. Maybe she treated Miss Maid as a quilt, a pillow, or a big doll, the kind of comfortable sleeping position where one likes to hold something when sleeping. Oh, it's getting more and more difficult. Aunt Ren's face had already rubbed against Miss Maid's face, and her hands began to become restless. Probably it was an instinct. Miss Maid slowly breathed a sigh of relief. She still didn't panic when facing this kind of thing. She planned to gently push Ren Xiling's body away with her strength. As for the forbidden magic in the city, it couldn't restrict her. Son, but Auntie Ren suddenly called out in her dream. Miss Maid suddenly stopped and saw Ren Xiling was just sleep-talking at this time. She shook her head. Remember, be good to your girlfriend, or I won't let you go. Boys should be more considerate to girls. If you make my future daughter-in-law angry, I'll give you a pastoral combination punch. Are you afraid? Take my scissors kick. This is probably a very rich dream. The little drama in Miss Ren's mind has always been very exciting, Miss Maid thought. But she still gently pushed Ren Xiling away and stood up again. After getting up, she meticulously tidied up the messy and wrinkled dress. According to Miss Maid's usual habit, if the dress was messed up like this, she would directly burn it and never wear a second time. But this time, she had the idea of keeping the dress for the first time. Miss Maid smiled gently and covered Aunt Ren with the quilt again. She planned to go back to the shop. Just as she turned around, Aunt Ren's legs suddenly stretched out from the quilt. Miss Maid, who had always pursued perfection, couldn't stand this, so she once again put Ren Xiling's legs and covered her with the quilt again. But this time it was her hands, covered with the quilt, turned over, covered with the quilt, kicked the quilt, covered with the quilt. Miss Maid finally sighed and decided to leave it like this for tonight. She didn't want to go back. She sat quietly at the bedside. This will be the only human being who has the honor of being taken care of by me, except for the owner of the shop. Miss Maid thought, I don't hate her. Luochio spent some time to dig out the suitcase with the saxophone from the cabinet and then gave it to Yi Yin with both hands. Yi Yin fondled the saxophone that had accompanied him for many days in nostalgia. Soon after, he began to play. This was his favorite song, and also the first song that Luochio learned. It was very comfortable to listen to at night. Yesterday, once more, Luochio couldn't play the feeling of Yi Yin. He missed the feeling of the past. In fact, Yi Yin was a gentler man than anyone else. Luochio suddenly had the idea of giving this gentleness to the whole city. A thought came to him. In the next room, Ren Xiling didn't kick the quilt anymore and really fell asleep. But she had already grabbed Miss Maid's hand and put it in front of her face like a baby. What a gentle song. Miss Maid smiled slightly. Long Shua came back in the middle of the night. Maybe because it was fully charged, she looked very energetic. Kelowna Shinryu, who couldn't sleep, planned to continue the unfinished copy. But the copy had already been finished, in failure. Kelowna Shinryu exploded with anger. She took a bottle of beer and climbed to the rooftop, looking at the quiet city while enjoying the wind. Unconsciously, she calmed down a lot. She seemed to be comforted by something, but there was also some sadness. Wine was not intoxicating, and she gradually became a little tipsy. Luo Dance fell asleep very early. She always had the style of sleeping early and waking up early. She smiled. She must have had a good dream tonight. Hey, in the abandoned building, there was a long, old sofa, the kind of sofa that was so broken that one could see the sponge squeezed out. More than a dozen monster cubs listened to Sister Blackwater's story and fell asleep unconsciously. But her voice didn't stop. She continued to read the story in the storybook softly. Yin Xiaoxi was still working. There were 2 stacks of documents in front of his desk, almost taller than his head. He suddenly felt a little tired, so he leaned on the back of the chair and planned to rest for a while. But unconsciously, he fell asleep. Fire Cloud, evil god, came over with a bowl of ginseng tea. Seeing that Yin Xiaoxi fell asleep, he walked out carefully again. Riaz was so interested in everything in the world above ground. After learning how to operate the computer, he planned to cram in the knowledge of the civilization above ground, regardless of Lyoga's objection. The female demon of the underwater city couldn't dissuade him, so she had to let him be. Soon after, she leaned on the sofa and fell asleep. Later, Riaz brought a blanket and covered her with it. This feels good. 2 figures sat on the bench in the park. They just sat there strangely, and one of them even said that he was a little sleepy. Then sleep, this feeling is really good. We don't need to hurry to find the Dimension Observer. Okay, Song Howren failed to sneak up on the princess of the Qin Nation again and was kicked out of the room. Song Ying didn't know how Song Howren managed to lie on the ground with his head down. She, who was wearing pajamas, couldn't stop laughing. Song Howren, who was a little hurt, thought of looking for the seniors of the Tao Society to have a drink and chat with them. At the same time, he wanted to flirt with the ladies that he paid for. The granddaughter of the Song family couldn't be bothered with him and directly returned to her room with a pillow. At this moment, Zhang Xingrue of the Zhang family called, saying that she couldn't sleep and wanted to chat. Thus, they each laid on their own beds and chatted. As they chatted, they unknowingly talked about a name that everyone intentionally avoided. What a dead person, Song Ying thought to herself. The plane had just arrived. The people of the Magician Association were still at the airport. Elizabeth, who was carrying a small suitcase, held Zhong Luo's hand and slowly came down from the escalator. Miraculously, the 2 tower masters, who were originally arguing, calmed down after getting off the plane. The Scarlet Flame Tower Master, who always had a fiery temper, seemed to be in a good mood at this moment. The Ice Tower Master's face was also not as cold as before. This city is really magical. It seems to be able to make people feel better. The vampire girl said softly at this time. Zhong Luoyuan nodded softly. The whole city seemed to be asleep. Li Zi opened the window. It was late at night outside. She leaned against the window and rested her chin on her hands. She looked at the moon that was about to turn round. She gently shook her head along with the rhythm of the music coming from the window. The moon seemed to have turned into an egg tart and was smiling at her. Chapter 1918. Li Zi opened her mouth and took a big bite. Then, she suddenly opened her eyes. Then, a sharp pain began to spread from her fingers to her head. Her whole body was trembling as if her tail was going to stand up, if she had a tail. She had bitten 3 of her fingers. Pooh! Pooh. She could only get up. She was hungry and smelled the food. She pushed the door open. Luochio was cleaning up the mess from last night in the living room. The kitchen door was half closed. Missy Yu was busy inside, the smell. Morning, Li Zi shouted blankly. At this time, Boss Luo raised his head and opened his mouth in surprise. Then, he smiled calmly and said, "Good morning." Li Zi found a very bad thing at this time. She either lived alone or was not used to living with Sister Ren, whose daily life was also terrible. She woke up habitually but forgot that there were more people in the house today. I'm going back to my room. Li Zi, who was only wearing 2 pieces of pink underwear, was attracted by the smell of food. She lowered her head and turned around. She put her hands behind her back, covering her buttocks, and ran into the room like a duck. Just as she slammed the door shut, the door to another room opened. Annie Rin walked out with a zombie-like bent body. Her complexion didn't look too good, and her lips were even dry. I want to die. Oh, this was the consequence of waking up the next day after being drunk. Annie Rin's throat was gurgling. She immediately covered her mouth and rushed into the bathroom. It seems to be lively again. Miss Maid came out with a plate of breakfast at this time. She was also wearing an apron with a little bear pattern on it. The blonde cook looked very pleasing to the eye at this moment. You're also very beautiful today. Boss Luo smiled. Ren Xiling rubbed her forehead while drinking the yogurt that was taken out from the refrigerator. The yogurt was prepared by Luochio, and she could only drink it now. So, when did Ian leave? Ren Xiling still felt uncomfortable in her throat. The feeling after vomiting was not far from the feeling of using something hard to rub her throat. He woke up before dawn. He said he had something to do and left first. Luochio said calmly, "About 5:30. So early." Ren Xiling murmured and continued to rub her forehead. Her brain was in a mess, and she didn't want to use her brain at all. Lizzie ate bowl after bowl of food in silence. She lowered her head and ate very quickly. Soon, she said that she was full and ran back to her room like a bolt of lightning. What's wrong with her today? Madame Run, who had a headache, asked in confusion. I don't know. Boss Luo, just a simple smile. Madame Rin shook her head and didn't want to use her brain. She immediately said, I can't eat. I really can't eat. Pack these things for me, and I'll take them to the company. I'll heat them up at noon. I'm going to change my clothes. It's time to go to work. Damn work. Sooner or later I'll. Hey, I'm a boss now. Stupid, stupid. Madame Rin walked back to her room while muttering. Not long after, Ren Xiling went out of the door in low spirits. No one noticed when Lizzie went out. After packing up, the servant girl cut a plate of fruit and sat beside Boss Luo. She carefully began to peel the skin of the grapes. Boss Luo smiled and turned on the TV. On the TV, the scene at this time was a bird's-eye view of the city. Where should I start? Boss Luo looked at one place and suddenly smiled. Let's start here. There was a sound. It was the sound of slogans. Lord Long, we all want to meet. If we don't meet today, we won't get up. The servant girl just glanced at it and lost interest. She continued to peel the skin of the grapes attentively. She planned to peel all the grapes on the plate. This one was Kelowna Shinryu. This one was Long Shuo. This one was Kelowna Zilong. This one was Long Shuo, and so on. Lord Long. Lord Long. Their voices gradually became uniform. After several days of continuous shouting, this group of big bosses of the monster race gradually became like retired cadres who were learning to sing in an old people's club. The reward was a plate of water poured from the window upstairs. I just washed my feet. Take it. No need to thank me. Long Shuo closed the window and ignored them. The people downstairs, the monsters downstairs, especially those who grew up listening to Kelowna Shinryu's invincibility, suddenly shivered at this time. Am I going to improve my power? The water with Shinryu's breath. This is sister. No, this is holy water. Even though the window was closed, Long Shuo could still hear the gradually strange sound from downstairs. She covered her ears and rushed out of the room with murderous intent, just in time to meet Luo dance. Then, the true dragon of the divine land was actually bounced away, completely defeated by the little butterfly demon's growing ferocious creature. It's time for you to lose weight, Long Shuo said in a serious tone. Huh? The little butterfly monster was full of question marks. Lose weight? Her body weight in human form had always been about 90 kilograms, never exceeding 100 kilograms. But the little butterfly monster shook her head quickly. Sister Long, little Fei asked me to give this to you. You came back yesterday, but you went out at that time. Little Fei stayed for a while and then went home. And Mo Xiaofei came back. Kelowna Shinryu gave a start. frowning subconsciously with a thoughtful look. Luo Dance handed the things brought by Mo Xiaofei to Long Shuo, then went downstairs to prepare breakfast. Long Shuo had to go back to the room and put on the earphones. After a while, she began to open the things sent by Mo Xiaofei. Inside the box was an unknown metal fragment with an irregular shape, as if it was torn out from somewhere. "What is this?" She picked up this metal fragment and looked at it carefully. The moment she touched it, she felt that this metal fragment was quite heavy, and there were some very old, broken characters engraved on it. As for how old it was, it could only be found in the innermost part of the book pavilion of Xinyuan Palace. It was the earliest language used in Kelowna. "Lady, Xian?" Kelowna Shinryu frowned, then put the metal fragment into the box, hurriedly went downstairs, and went straight to the underground training ground. "I'm not going to eat breakfast. I have to go out." Before leaving, Kelowna Shinryu ran into the kitchen and said, "Pour a plate of water on me at noon. 2 plates." What could the little butterfly monster say? Of course she wouldn't. Shaking her head, the little butterfly monster casually glanced at the calendar on the wall. Tomorrow was the first day of the extraordinary summit meeting. Yin Xiaoxi woke up in the morning with a stiff neck. He didn't expect that he would sleep here for a night, but he felt much better. The gloomy feeling of being trapped in the gray and stagnant world seemed to have been swept away. He felt like he had just come back from a vacation. Perhaps he had really reached his limit and thus fell asleep unknowingly. Yin Xiaoxi soon found a reasonable explanation. He picked up his phone and saw that there were many missed calls and messages. Yin Xiaoxi opened them one by one. The Magician Association's diplomatic mission arrived at midnight. This was one of the more important messages, so Yin Xiaoxi had to pay attention to it. Although there were many different kinds of inhuman organizations in the inhuman realm, the Magician Association was undoubtedly the largest and most ferocious organization. It was rumored that the first Tower Master of the association, Hui Yao, was invincible in the entire European world. As for the Magician Association itself, it was also quite large. To a certain extent, it even represented the order of the inhuman realm in the entire European world. However, Yin Xiaoxi couldn't take the initiative to contact the diplomatic mission of the Magician Association at this time. He couldn't take the initiative to contact any party before the extraordinary summit started, so as to avoid releasing signals that would make the other extraordinary diplomatic missions feel uneasy. The diplomatic mission of Underwater City was an exception. The higher-ups of the administration seemed to have the intention to reach some in-depth cooperation with Underwater City, and they didn't intend to disclose the existence of Underwater City for the time being. Yin Xiaoxi continued to look through the messages, most of which were some miscellaneous tasks, as well as some messages from groups that had yet to arrive. Tomorrow was the first day of the meeting, and most of the people who were supposed to be here had already arrived. The rest were probably little princes and the like. Is it useful? Yin Xiaoxi couldn't help but shake his head. However, at this moment, a new message came directly. Yin Xiaoxi glanced at it, and his face instantly turned solemn. The new message roughly read, "Early this morning, a black shaman from the inhuman realm was found dead in his room. Preliminary judgment is that this is a murder case. It's suddenly troublesome." Section Chief Yin frowned immediately. On the streets of Japan, in a very popular ramen restaurant, Natsuya Suzuki was eating ramen very generously. The soup splattered everywhere. At this moment, a piece of tissue was suddenly extended in front of Natsuya Suzuki. He froze in shock and turned around, only to see that there was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man with gray hair sitting beside him. He was wearing a gray beret and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. "You are that comic artist who's very good at drawing comics." Natsuya Suzuki opened his mouth and pondered hard. "What's your name again?" Cha Tion." He was obviously a popular writer who had a very high status in the comic world of Japan and had been serialized for more than 20 years. His name was Cha Tion. "You said that if I wanted to find you, I would naturally find you." Cha Tion smiled at this moment. "I've tried it, and it's true." Natsuya Suzuki didn't use a tissue. Instead, he wiped his mouth with his sleeve and perked up. He squinted and said with a smile, "Why?" Do you have a business deal for me? I'm best at collecting debts for people. It doesn't matter how bad the debt is. No one owes me a debt. Cha Tian smiled faintly. Natsuya Suzuki immediately lost interest. Then there's nothing to talk about. If you're just curious about me, this meal is a meeting fee. Thank you. How about we talk about another business deal? Cha Tian suddenly said. Natsuya Suzuki tilted his head. Would you be interested in being my bodyguard for a few days? Bodyguard? Cha Tian nodded. I'm going to a place with a lot of people soon. It may be dangerous, or it may not. I just want to make some preparations. It's not convenient for me to be alone. If there's someone like you, it should be much more convenient. His main profession is a debt collector, which is actually the traditional so-called thug. Thug being a bodyguard and so on is not a problem in itself. Anyway, it's all about fighting, and this is indeed what Suzuki Shea is best at. What are you going to do? He asked curiously. I'm going to record something, Cha Tian said indifferently. Just think of it as me going to collect literature. How about it? Do you agree? Think carefully. I'm not cheap. Natsuya Suzuki narrowed his eyes. Don't worry. I won't let you down in terms of price. Cha Tian smiled faintly. Natsuya Suzuki also chuckled. I'll decide according to the situation. I'll settle with you at the end, as long as you don't regret it. Then, this meal will be the deposit. Boss, pack 10 dumplings for me to take away. Cha Tian shook his head as he watched this rascal walk out with a big bag full of dumplings. He felt that Natsuya Suzuki was not only mysterious, but also interesting. He immediately called his assistant. Plane tickets. Please add 2 more people, an adult and a child. He would not represent Japan. Japan's psionic ability world did not know of his existence. He would not represent anyone. He simply wanted to record this major event that would change the entire world. Transcendence Summit Meeting. Gong Fanqing walked on the waves. Even for someone like her, flying in the air would consume a considerable amount of energy. Furthermore, the speed at which she walked on the waves was not slow. However, Wolfgang and Charlotte were following behind her at a steady pace. This made Gong Fanqing feel rather annoyed. She was unable to get rid of these 2 mysterious fellows. But right at this moment, Gong Fanqing suddenly heard a long whistle. The she-devil of the divine land couldn't help but be shocked. This is His Holiness's. Gong Fanqing's face immediately lit up and her speed increased by a lot. Wolfgang and Charlotte naturally heard the long whistle as well. The 2 of them, who were puzzled, also increased their speed. Soon, they saw a small island. The island was actually not far away from the mainland. They could even see the distant coastline. At this moment, on the island, there was a dignified man in his 30s who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Seeing him, Gong Fanqing sped up again. She jumped in front of the man and knelt down directly. Greetings to his honor. The man did not say anything. He just looked indifferently at Wolfgang and Charlotte, who were following behind Gong Fanqing. He frowned slightly. Who are they? Several months ago, I had a fight with Qin Shiyu, the successor of Huanjin's sect. I was injured and fell into the sea. I drifted overseas. These 2 rescued me from the sea. That's how I got to know them. Gong Fanqing had to give a simple explanation. The dignified man nodded. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Wolfgang. Without saying anything, he pushed out his palm. Wolfgang originally looked relaxed. However, the moment the man pushed out his palm, his expression changed slightly. He frowned, and his fingers moved quickly. The vibrations in the air surged at this time, and an illusory light screen condensed in front of him in an instant. The man's palm imprinted on the light screen. The light screen was broken instantly. Wolfgang had no choice but to step back a few steps. As for the man, he also stepped back a few steps. He looked at Wolfgang with surprise and muttered, "Your strength is really rare. I admire you. You're not bad either." Wolfgang was not sure about the man's background. Therefore, he became more cautious. "You're a guest from afar. Why don't you come to the island for a chat?" The man said indifferently, "I've been meditating on the island these days. I built a small house, which is quite elegant." With a chuckle, the man turned around and left. Gong Fanqing hurriedly stood up and followed the man. His honor's power has actually recovered to such an extent. It seems that during the time when he was drifting overseas, he had already swallowed a lot of essence and blood of Song family's descendants. Emperor Song. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS1. First of all, I want to thank the cute lord of sudden transformation. I want to give a solid salute to the capitalist boss. PS2, 0/1, PS3. This chapter is from yesterday. Something strange happened yesterday. I was caught by the big-breasted alien and was just released. Sure enough, writing is more enjoyable. Chapter 1919. The island was very small, but they could see some traces of human life on the road. Wolfgang and Charlotte soon saw the small house mentioned by the man who made Gong Fanqing kneel. It was indeed a very small house, hidden in the forest of the island. I smell something on this guy that should only belong to the dead. Charlotte's words suddenly rang in Wolfgang's ears, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded thoughtfully. The dead wouldn't have such a strong power. It wasn't that he was afraid, but more of a curiosity. The transcendents were limited in the modern world, and the more dangerous the subworld was, the greater the restrictions. Even the so-called gods were often disappointed. But the other party was obviously not such a person. Was he the pinnacle creature created by the modern world? They called all those who reached the limit of the modern world, but didn't leave the modern world as pinnacle creatures or ultimate powerhouses. The people in the Transcendence organization wouldn't look down on any pinnacle creature in a modern world. The only difference between a pinnacle creature and transcendent was that one was inside, while the other was outside. But in theory, the maximum power that they could release in the modern world was equal. The Shinryu in Kelowna dared to say that even if an immortal came, he would beat them up if he didn't like them, because of this equal condition. However, this subworld allowed too many pinnacle creatures to exist. Wolfgang muttered something in his heart, but he saw that the man leading the way had stopped and invited them into the simple house. Wolfgang and Charlotte looked at each other and understood each other's intention, to wait and see. You can call me Mr. Song. The man smiled. For now, I will act as Mr. Song. In other words, you don't intend to tell us your true identity, right? Wolfgang smiled indifferently. What kind of people hadn't he seen before? From the transcended thrones to the wandering ghosts. He wouldn't be surprised by the other party's true identity. At most, he would feel curious, but he didn't necessarily want to know. It would depend on whether the other party was worth it or not. For example, the King of Hell that he and Charlotte were searching for was obviously worth it. If he could trick Lucifer into joining the Transcending Great organization, then he would be able to reap great rewards for his hard work. Recruiting a King of Hell to become a member was much more profitable than the other guys working hard to find a newcomer with potential. No, I plan to tell you. Mr. Song smiled, but only after you pledge your loyalty to me. Wolfgang was startled. As for Charlotte, she was sizing him up with great interest. In the end, Wolfgang shook his head. He was a musician. He would only be irritated when there was a problem with his inspiration. Normally, he was like a gentleman. Even when he heard ridiculous words, he was still quite calm. He smiled and said, "Perhaps Mr. Song still doesn't understand the current situation. Of course, this is understandable, but it's a pity that at least we won't pledge our loyalty to anyone. We are free. The more powerful a person is, the more arrogant they will be, even rebellious." Mr. Song said indifferently, "I understand this point very well because I've seen many talented people like this. But in the end, they all submit." Why? Wolfgang wasn't angry at all. He only felt that it was ridiculous. He smiled and asked, "Because." At this time, Mr. Song's face was solemn, and his voice was like 1,000 mountains. All under the sky is the king's territory. All on the shores of the earth are the king's subjects. I am the world. Wolfgang's and Charlotte's expressions changed slightly. Mr. Song's voice directly crashed into their hearts and was madly attacking their inherent beliefs. However, not to mention Wolfgang, who was a transcending great expert who walked in the void, even Charlotte was a banshee who often accompanied the King of Hell. How could they submit so easily? They couldn't resist for more than a moment. Mr. Song's solemn voice was instantly expelled from their hearts. Wolfgang immediately snorted coldly. When a musician lost his temper, He wouldn't recognize anyone, let alone a stranger. Charlotte's eyes suddenly turned from frivolous to sharp. She suddenly pulled out the black umbrella, and a sharp, thin sword was hidden inside. But this time, an 8 trigrams mark appeared in the air. Wolfgang and Charlotte were trapped in this 8 trigrams mark at the same time. A purple light flashed on Mr. Song's face. The 8 trigrams mark instantly shrank at this time. Wolfgang and Charlotte felt this mark almost at the same time. The moment this mark appeared, their souls seemed to be scattered. Wolfgang's face had a trace of incredulity. He had seen this kind of 8 trigrams before. This seems to be the Fushi throne's illusion. However, before the incredulity in his heart completely dissipated, the 8 trigrams mark had already locked him and Charlotte at the same time. At the same time, Mr. Song slowly said, "Great Tao of primordial chaos. Soul lock seal." The 8 trigrams mark instantly shattered. At the same time, the same 8 trigrams mark appeared on the back of Wolfgang's and Charlotte's left hands at the same time. It was as if it was imprinted with fire. The 8 trigrams mark on the back of their hands gave the two a burning feeling from time to time, directly connecting their souls. It was excruciating. Then, Mr. Song waved his hand, and a strong wind directly swept Wolfgang and Charlotte out the door. Mr. Song said indifferently, "From now on, the two of you are the king's subjects. If you are disloyal, you will suffer the pain of having your soul locked. Now, I will let the two of you experience the pain of having your soul locked." Wolfgang and Charlotte, who were swept out of the door, fell into a pool outside the house at this time. They floated out of the water, and the moment they heard the voice of Mr. Song, the two of them began to scream like never before. In the wooden house, Mr. Song, who had just used the soul lock seal, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His age seemed to disappear in an instant, and he suddenly looked like he was in his 40s from his 30s. His temples were a little more gray, and his face was a lot thinner. "Your Excellency!" Gong Fanqing was shocked. Mr. Song waved his hand and said indifferently, "I'm fine. I just lost some essence blood. I can make up for it for my descendants later. Since Gong Sunhua is dead, it's inconvenient for you to work for me alone. It's worth it to subdue these two people this time." Gong Fanqing said worriedly, "Your Excellency, Wolfgang and Charlotte are mysterious. I haven't seen the bottom line of their strength. I don't know if the soul lock seal can really subdue these two people." "Why not?" Mr. Song said indifferently. "Even immortals will be suppressed by the soul lock seal when they are lost. This is the Emperor's martial art from the Xianyuan Palace. There are immortals suppressed by the soul lock seal in the Xianyuan Palace." Gong Fanqing's eyes suddenly changed. This was a secret she had never heard before. "I'm tired. I need to rest." Mr. Song waved his hand again and said, "After they have tasted the pain of the soul lock seal, you can tell them the rules." "I know." Gong Fanqing's face was pale, but she respectfully left the wooden house. However, as soon as she left, there was a surge of purple qi on Mr. Song's face. His aging continued at this time, but it seemed to be forcibly suppressed. At most, it stopped. Mr. Song's eyes couldn't help but become a little tired. Those descendants are all mixed in good and bad. Not many of them can be useful. Mr. Song's eyes gradually became gloomy. Only the most outstanding descendants, those who can fight for the dragon, can really revive me. Song Howren, don't let me wait too long. In a quiet courtyard in the city. Judging from the situation at the scene, the deceased didn't get into a fight with anyone before he died. According to the other members of the diplomatic mission, they returned to their rooms after dinner. As for the deceased, he had the habit of praying every night and didn't like to be disturbed by others. Yin Xiaoxi was covering her mouth and nose with a piece of tissue paper while listening to the preliminary investigation report. At this moment, he was at the crime scene of the murder, one of the guest houses that had been prepared for the various envoys of the summit. The deceased was a black uncle who looked to be in his 50s. His face was full of tattoos. Then, there was the look of his death. This black uncle priest from the Middle Earth was only left with his skin at this time. All the internal organs, bones, and muscles under the skin had completely melted and were discharged from the pores on his body. The carpet on the floor was directly stained with sewage. What about the first person who found the deceased? It was the deputy of the diplomatic mission. It was daybreak, and he found the corpse when he came to deliver breakfast to the priest. Then he informed us, "Our people are trying to appease the members of the diplomatic mission, but it doesn't seem to be working." At this time, the subordinate said anxiously, "This priest has a very high prestige in their land. If we can't solve this matter," Yin Xiaoxi frowned and said, "Surveillance cameras, standing guards, secret room." We didn't find anything for the entire night. Logically speaking, all supernatural powers should be prohibited here. The subordinate was puzzled and said, "No one should be able to avoid our surveillance and come in from the outside." Yin Xiaoxi suddenly said, "Apart from this diplomatic mission, what other diplomatic missions have been arranged to stay here?" "Apart from this diplomatic mission, there are 3 others." The subordinate quickly said, "Basically, they're all from a non-Middle Earth continent." The relationship between the supernatural organizations in the non-Middle Earth continent is very complicated, and there are many of them. The ones who can participate in this meeting are local organizations that have a history of more than 100 years, or even hundreds of years. However, when we arrange for them to stay here, we've already done some research and separated the organizations that have conflicts with each other. There are no conflicts between the diplomatic missions that have stayed here. In fact, 2 of them have always been friendly with each other. I'd like to meet the leaders of these 3 organizations. Go and make the arrangements. Yin Xiaoxi nodded and immediately instructed, "Seal everything here first. I know that we can't keep this a secret, but at least before sunset, we can't let too many people know about this. Tomorrow is the first day of the meeting, and I don't want to cause too much trouble. There was a murder on the day before the meeting. It seems like this matter is directed at us." "Chief, do you mean that there's a high possibility that someone is trying to sabotage this summit meeting?" "I hope not," Yin Xiaoxi said in a low voice. Yin Xiaoxi said in a deep voice, "Also, send 2 more teams here to search this guest house thoroughly. Give me the results in an hour." "Yes. Daddy, there's a big guy outside." In the passenger plane that was flying abroad, the child was lying in front of the window and yelling without turning his head. As the father, the man moved away casually. The big guy probably looked like a white cloud that looked like a hippopotamus. The man closed the window casually and said, "The sun is going to shine in later, and it'll be very glaring. Be good." The child still wanted to look, but he soon gave in under the stern gaze of his father and turned to look at the skirt of the flight attendant. At this moment, the passenger plane suddenly shook. "Please don't panic. It's just a turbulence. It's all right now." At the same time, the broadcast system of the passenger plane sounded. "Why is there turbulence all of a sudden?" The captain looked at the dashboard in surprise, but there was no warning at all. However, the plane soon returned to normal, and he had no choice but to shake his head. What the captain did not know was that a huge black shadow was swimming through the clouds at this moment. The black shadow swept past the plane and flew into the distance. It looked like a huge black dragon in Western mythology. We should be arriving at our destination soon. On the back of the black dragon, Miss Soul, which was looking at the map with difficulty. At the same time, she glared at the figure sitting on the black dragon's head, unmoving despite the strong wind blowing against him. Feral. She still could not understand why this old guy did not want to take the plane, which was so convenient. Instead, he forcefully grabbed the black dragon and made it cross the entire Eurasian continent and enter the mysterious Kelowna of the East. At this moment, Miss Soul, which climbed to the black dragon's neck with difficulty. Then she grabbed the scales and climbed up the dragon's head to Feral's side. She did not care about her hair that was blown up by the wind and directly roared in Feral's ear. "I can't stand it anymore. I want to go down." Feral ignored her. Without his order, even the arrogant black dragon did not dare to stop at this moment. Miss Soul, which was already angry, had to directly grab Feral's shoulder and fiercely bite down. Her teeth almost broke. How hard is this old guy's body? Feral, who had been resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. He then knocked on the dragon's horn, and the black dragon instantly stopped. Miss Soul, which was thrown out by the inertia. "I can't fly. Help! Miss Soul, which instantly screamed in horror. A white light flashed from the dragon's back. The chubby granddaughter of the sword, Saint, rushed out like a swimming dragon. She repeatedly swung her sword in the air, making the air crackle. She used the motion of swinging her sword to stop her body in the air and rushed out, grabbing Miss Soul, which by the collar, and finally returning to the black dragon's head. That was close. The chubby girl let out a long sigh of relief. Miss Soul, which was still in shock, did not have the time to be grateful. She hurriedly glared at Farrell. "Old man, are you trying to kill me so that you don't have to fulfill your promise? Why did you suddenly stop?" Farrell stood up and looked ahead. After a long while, he slowly said, "We can't go forward anymore." "Why?" Miss Soul, which asked instinctively. Farrell did not say anything. He just pulled out his sword from Miss Soul Witch's hand and slashed. A huge sword light instantly broke through the clouds and shot directly into the distance. However, in just a moment, the sword light had disappeared. It was not the kind of disappearance where the momentum was exhausted, but the kind where it disappeared without a trace. "This," Miss Soul, which could not help but open her mouth. "This is the rumored anti-magic space." She subconsciously glanced at the old man, Farrell, and could not help but worry about his plans. Farrell had always been looking for the so-called newcomers with potential so that he could fight against the so-called Great Terror that he had mentioned. But when he heard about the appearance of the World Extraordinary Summit, this guy suddenly changed his plans. He had a new plan. In the old man's words, this was a good opportunity to gather forces. Who knew if this old man would go crazy during the World Extraordinary Summit? Thinking about it this way, the anti-magic space seemed to be a good thing. At least if this old man really went crazy, it would not be a situation where no one could stop him. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go in." Miss Soul, which became excited. As long as she entered the anti-magic space, she had 10,000 ways to change this situation where the man was stronger than the woman. It was time to change the situation, but at this moment, a small black shadow suddenly appeared in front of everyone. It was a black drone used for filming. A small probe extended from the drone, hovering in front of the crowd. A voice then came out from the probe. "This is the China administration, the temporary headquarters of the summit meeting. You have violated the relevant regulations of our country regarding the prohibition of flying for transcendent beings. Please show your identification immediately. Otherwise, we will treat this as bang." The drone directly split into two and then exploded in the air. The one who made the move was Farrell, who was still holding Miss Soul Witch's sword. "What is the Kelowna authority?" Farrell asked calmly. "You only asked after you split it?" Miss Soul, which suddenly felt dizzy and cursed, "Crazy, crazy." In other words, this is the night mechanism of the East. "I understand now." Farrell nodded. After spending a lot of time explaining clearly, the soul, which could not help but have a headache. How should she explain this to the Kelowna authority? Should she say with a smile, "Sorry everyone, this old man was locked up more than 100 years ago, so he did not know that you were officially established a few decades ago"? Like this? She would probably be scolded to death. "It's good that you understand." Miss Soulwitch sighed. "This world is different from your era. You should be more careful when doing things. After all, this is the East. Even if you don't know about the authority, have you not heard of the Kelowna Shinryu? If it was not for the Extraordinary Summit, I am afraid that we would have encountered the legendary invincible Eastern Dragon the moment we stepped into Kelowna. How could we let you fly in directly? How could I not think of that?" Farrell suddenly looked up. "I actually forgot. The Eastern Shinryu. She could be the counterforce. Damn it, I only thought of this now." Farrell, who was trembling with excitement, directly jumped down from the black dragon's head. The soul which could not stop him even if she wanted to. This old man. Chapter 1920. Pungdash. With a loud noise, the trees in the small valley even shook slightly. The depths of the small valley seemed to have been smashed by a big rock from the sky. A pangolin that was digging here poked its head out of the soil and ran toward the depths of the small valley at a very fast speed. This was its territory, and it would treat this incident as an invasion of its territory. Soon, The pangolin had arrived at the place where the loud noise originated. A thin man in a wrinkled, white casual suit was standing next to the big pit and looking around. Chirp, 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 chirp. The pangolin made a sound directly. It wanted to drive away the guy who destroyed its territory. The sound it made was instantly heard by the man. However, before the pangolin could react, the man had already appeared in front of it. He directly reached out and grabbed its neck, lifting it up. This pangolin was the size of an adult. The pangolin's eyes instantly turned red in anger. It waved its claws, which could easily cut through rocks. However, the man suddenly grabbed the pangolin's neck and pressed it directly to the ground. Bang dash! There was another loud noise. The pangolin only felt that its whole body was broken, and it was in extreme pain. However, something even more frightening was yet to come. The moment it opened its eyes, it saw that a huge, pitch-black creature had appeared in front of it at an unknown time. The pangolin instantly shouted at the man who attacked it. At the same time, a figure jumped down from the huge black shadow. The soul, which landed beside Feral. Seeing that he was holding a huge pangolin at this time, she was startled. "Old man, what have you done?" Feral turned back and said, "Listen to what this thing has to say. Your soul power should be able to communicate directly. This is how I use it? Translator?" The soul, which glared at Feral fiercely, but before entering the anti-magic space, she couldn't win against this old man. She could only accept her fate and become a temporary translator. The power of the soul, focus. Miss Witch's eyes gradually met the pangolin's eyes. "Who are you? Let me go. This is my home. You can't commit murder here. This is Lord Long's territory. You dare to do such a thing? Just wait for the Lord Long to deal with you." Earlier on, the Nordic ambassadors and the jungle mystics had been beaten up by the dragon basher because they had injured the old fox. "Let go of me. Let me go. One good news, one bad news." After some discussion, the witch looked at Feral. "Which one do you want to hear?" Feral just calmly glanced at the witch of the mind. The witch immediately shuddered. "The good news is that this demon-like pangolin should be able to help you find the legendary Shinryu of the East. The bad news is that this place seems to be the territory of the Shinryu of the East. By injuring this pangolin, you have offended the legendary Shinryu of the East. I am here for the greater good." Farlier said indifferently. "A small sacrifice is nothing. As a guardian of the East, he shouldn't be so petty. This is the bearing of a guardian. I will apologize for injuring this pangolin." There seemed to be no problem with his words, but there seemed to be a big problem. Miss Witch was stunned. The guardian of the East, the legendary invincible Kelowna Shinryu of the East, probably would be like what the old guy said. As a guardian of the divine land, he wouldn't be so calculative, right? No way, right? No way, right? "Take it, let's go to the city." Feral had always been swift and decisive. At this time, he made a decision directly. The day before the meeting, the Mad Knight entered the city. Longshore knew where Mo Xiaofei lived, but it would take some time to get there from the pet hospital. After all, everyone lived in this forbidden city. Therefore, Kelowna Shinryu could only use Kelowna to take a taxi, which was expensive. Mo Xiaofei must have spent an uncomfortable night at home. When she called Mo Xiaofei out of the house, his face didn't look good. "I was nagged by my family for a whole night. My dad fell asleep at dawn." "Who told you to go to the plateau in the west without saying a word?" Longshaw pulled the ears of this cheap apprentice angrily. "Master, I told you that I went to the greedy wolf tribe." Mo Xiaofei rubbed his ears, feeling wronged. Longshaw stopped, looking at Mo Xiaofei seriously. "You know why I came to you? What do you want to tell me?" Mo Xiaofei nodded. "Master, have you seen the thing I left for you?" "How did you get this thing?" Kelowna Shinryu asked directly. Mo Xiaofei said, "Let's go and meet with Purple Star first. It's better to talk about this matter together." Longshaw looked at Mo Xiaofei doubtfully, then nodded. "Where is the Greedy Wolf tribe's envoy now?" "It seems to be a hotel called Song Dynasty." Mo Xiaofei thought for a while and said, "Purple Star told me that their tribe was temporarily arranged to stay in this hotel by the administration. It seems that there are some people from the Tao Association in the hotel." "Okay." Longshaw nodded. Then let's find a place. And Mo Xiaofei said, Master, wait for me. I'll go get the car and take you there. Kelowna Shinryu glanced at Mo Xiaofei in surprise. When did this guy learn how to drive? Did he really grow so much after a trip to the plateau in the west? Just here? Yes, I can ride very fast. Mo Xiaofei smiled proudly at this time. I added a cushion for you at the back seat. It will be more comfortable. With that said, Mo Xiaofei patted the back seat in his mouth. A black Phoenix brand bicycle. Kelowna Shinryu's eyes twitched a few times, and his crow's feet were almost pulled out. Then he took out his phone, Kelowna taxi. How could the great Kelowna Shinryu laugh at the back seat of a bicycle? Song Dynasty Hotel, in the office of the CEO on the top floor. Song Ying was signing some daily documents, yawning from time to time. Last night, she chatted with Ms. Zhang and didn't know how she ended the call. When she woke up in the morning, she was seriously sleep-deprived. She didn't expect that after entering society for several years, she would still talk to her friends on the phone late at night, without sleeping like a high school girl. What was this? Regaining the innocence of a young girl? Bah, I'm still very innocent. At this time, the assistant outside the door called in from the intercom. Miss Song, Miss Zhong is calling you. She said you will answer her call. Not answering. This was the first reaction of the Song family's granddaughter. Then she realized, wait, Miss Zhong, what Miss Zhong? She said Zhong Luoyue, Miss Zhong. Song Ying's mouth opened slightly, and after blinking her eyes, she cleared her throat again, and even adjusted her collar before saying indifferently, put her through. Song Ying held the phone. The call was actually connected, but both parties didn't seem to want to take the initiative to speak. The granddaughter of the Song family still liked to take the initiative, so she chuckled and said, I've been wondering when you would call me. You can really endure it, senior sister Zhong. You didn't even think that I would call you, did you, Junior Song? Zhong Liu's chuckle came from the other end of the phone. How is it? Are you comfortable after buying my Four Seasons hotel? Of course. Song Ying shrugged directly and said, After all, this is Senior Song's painstaking effort. How can I not be comfortable? Thank you, Senior Song. The current predecessor of the Royal Hotel was indeed Zhong Liu's Four Seasons Hotel. If it weren't for the existence of a ready-made hotel, Song Dynasty wouldn't have been able to stand in the city in such a short time. At first, Song Ying accompanied Luochio to come back according to the old man's wish. Originally, she just wanted to do some small business to test the water, but she met Zhong Luoyue, who suddenly sold the Four Seasons Hotel, so Song Ying took it without hesitation. Of course, she didn't use the name of Song Dynasty, but through other subsidiaries. However, Song Ying knew that Zhong Luoyue would know that she was the one behind the acquisition sooner or later. She was waiting to see Zhong Luoyue's ugly expression. However, she didn't expect that Zhong Luoyue didn't respond at all, as if she had evaporated. After a long time, Song Ying forgot about this matter. Junior sister, are you interested in meeting me? Zhong Luoyue suddenly said from the other end of the phone. I'm back. Song Ying couldn't help but be startled. At this time, Zhong Luoyue, who had been missing for a period of time, couldn't be found in the Song family headquarters in Beijing. However, at the critical moment when the extraordinary summit meeting was about to begin, she suddenly appeared. She pondered for a while and said, Time and place. I've sent a message to your assistant. Zhong Luoyue said indifferently. I'll meet you alone. Of course, if you're worried, it's fine to bring a bodyguard. I know that Junior Song has always been careful. The phone had been cut off. Song Ying immediately gritted her teeth and slapped the landline phone back. Bitch. Not bringing anyone. Do you think I'm stupid? She planned to bring a dozen bodyguards, armed to the teeth, and beat her up. Wow. McLaren, 720S. As soon as the taxi driver from Shenzhou stopped in front of the Song Dynasty Hotel, a Helios orange sports car rushed out in an instant, followed by several black Alpha business cars. Looking at Mo Xiaofei, whose eyes were full of stars, Kelowna Shinryu, who had paid the fare reluctantly, just now squinted. What's 720? You don't understand. This is a man's romance. And Mo Xiaofei shook his head. When can I have one? Long Shirua shook her head. She had no interest in these human vehicles, which were not only slow but also very expensive. Recently, the pet hospital was not open much. Kelowna Shinryu found that the low salary of the consultant position given to her by the administration was not enough to cover the expenses. It must be because the damn butterfly ate too much. Let's go in, Longshaw said indifferently. Those guys from the Tao Sect Association also live here. I don't want to see them. With that, Kelowna Shinryu put on a hat, sunglasses, and a mustache. Mo Xiaofei was stunned. Did he feel that this was more eye-catching? Purple Star had already arranged for a warrior of the Greedy Wolf clan to welcome them. Both the Tao Sect Association and the Monster Race Association were arranged to stay in Song Dynasty Hotel. Of course, the two areas were separated, with only a courtyard in the middle connecting them. The representatives of the Tao Sect Association had basically checked in, but only the Greedy Wolf clan stayed in the Monster Race Association. The rest of the Monster Race were having an illegal gathering in front of Kelowna Shinryu's house. But even with the accompaniment of the Greedy Wolf clan, Longshaw and Mo Xiaofei still had to go through the strict inspection of the agents from the administration. You, take off your sunglasses and tear off this trashy fake mustache. How dare you embarrass yourself with such an inferior disguise? Mo Xiaofei instantly knew that he was in trouble. Sure enough, when the black-faced Kelowna Shinryu took off his sunglasses and tore off his mustache, the agent from the administration standing guard in front of him suddenly felt their legs go soft and couldn't move. Come, tell me your names, positions, and employee numbers. Be good, I just want to know. I won't take revenge on you. Kelowna Shinryu smiled and said, You should know me. I'm the most magnanimous. I'll never be calculative. How could I do such a despicable thing as making things difficult for others? You will. You definitely will. I don't remember when it happened. I only know that a hothead accidentally offended Consultant Long, and he was still cleaning the toilets of the administration headquarters. The famous saying of the administration, You offended Consultant Long, and you still want to get promoted? We were wrong. We'll reflect on ourselves. Longshaw rolled her eyes and waved her hand, saying directly, Can I go in now? Of course. Of course. Longshaw hummed again. I don't want too many people to know that I'm here. We know what to do. Consultant Long. Everyone nodded quickly. Kelowna Shinryu looked at the Greedy Wolf clan soldiers and said indifferently, Lead the way. Kelowna Shinryu put on his sunglasses again and stuck on his mustache. He was quite persistent. Should we report it or not? Do you want to die, cleaning toilets for the rest of your life? Even if we report it, the higher-ups can't do anything to Consultant Long. It's useless to report it, but we offended her instead. Who in the administration doesn't know that Consultant Long is the most narrow-minded? Let's play cards. Okay. The Greedy Wolf clan soldier who was leading the way was a bit nervous. After all, the person behind him was the legend of Kelowna Land. He felt that he could brag about it for the rest of his life when he got close to the dragon god of Kelowna Land. Lord Long, if we go through this courtyard, we will reach the place where our young master is currently living. Okay. Longshaw replied indifferently and casually glanced at the courtyard. At this moment, there was a man and a woman in the courtyard. The woman was sitting in front of a stone table with a straight posture and closed eyes. As for the man, he was standing with his legs apart, which was the most basic stance of a martial artist. Kelowna Shinryu frowned subconsciously. Longshaw felt that this woman in a simple white training suit was somewhat special. It was just that the forbidden law of the city severely restricted her inspiration. Who is inside? Longshaw asked subconsciously. The Greedy Wolf clan soldier took a look and continued. That man seems to be the newly appointed secretary of the Tao Sect Association. When young master moved in yesterday, he came over to greet him. As for the woman, I don't know. Secretary. Longshaw was deep in thought. At this moment, the woman in white, who was resting with her eyes closed in the courtyard, suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze was sharp, and she looked straight at them. She seemed to have felt the gaze of the true dragon of the divine land, and she looked back at him. What happened? Song Howren, who was practicing his stance, seemed to have sensed something and asked curiously. Nothing, don't stop slacking. The woman in white said indifferently, but her gaze was still locked on Kelowna Shinryu. I wonder where this expert came from. The woman in white thought to herself. But at this moment, the woman in white saw Mo Xiaofei, who was following beside Kelowna Shinryu. In an instant, the woman in white stood up abruptly. This is father. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual. Chapter 1921. Miss Maid hung up yesterday's clothes and returned to the living room. She was more like a virtuous hostess when she was not wearing a maid suit. Master, do you have any dishes you want to eat at noon? There should be a lot of materials left last night, so I don't need to buy any more today. Boss Luo said casually, and then picked up the remote control to change the channel. This was probably the most magical TV in the world. Miss Maid glanced at it expressionlessly. The master finally changed from Shinryu TV to another channel. Maybe it was born to take a taxi in Kelowna. The scene changed to a small valley outside the city. Isn't this the legendary Evilest Night? Miss Maid said indifferently. It seems that this meeting is really lively. But Boss Luo quickly changed the channel again. The scene changed to a hotel in a guest house. Now it was Xiao Shitai. Well, murder. I like this program. Boss Luo took a sip of water and smiled. Let's play a game of guessing who is the murderer. This seems to be the effect of some secret medicine. Of course, it just looks like it. If we can check it directly, we will probably know what the cause of death is. She sat down with her legs together and leaned against the wall. She seemed to be interested in it. Miss Maid smiled slightly. In fact, as long as it was not Shinryu TV, it was fine. Anyway, it was just to pass the time. It may not be supernatural power, but must be related to supernatural power. Soon, there were preliminary results for the examination of the priest from the non-Middle-earth continent. The traditional forensic medicine system was naturally impossible. The autopsy was carried out by more professional talents in the administration. They also used new equipment that was different from the traditional ones. There was a small episode in this that was the administration's equipment update during this period was a little excessive. It was even to the extent that new equipment could be developed every week. This was all thanks to the wansu, or mother lode, that the administration later obtained from the Penglai treasure house. Under the effect of wansu, a strange mineral that could synthesize any substance, the crazy ideas stored in the minds of scientists were gradually realized. What do you mean? Yin Xiaoxi asked with a frown. He had already met the leaders of the other 3 supernatural groups in the guest house, but he did not find anything useful. Black Uncle Shaman had indeed died mysteriously in his room without anyone noticing. Although we are forbidden, it doesn't mean that we can't use any supernatural powers. The inspector said, for example, we detected a very strong poison in the body of the deceased. This kind of poison cannot be concocted by ordinary people. It must be synthesized through extraordinary means. It's obvious that it worked, turning all the tissues under the victim's skin into pus. Do you mean that the transcendent being's poison won't be affected by the restrictive spell? Yin Xiaoxi's expression froze. You could say that. The commissioner nodded. But at the end of the day, although poison is made in an extraordinary way, it is not out of the realm of chemistry. Therefore, it can be used. Section Chief Yin, although our Dao weapons can't be used, conventional weapons are normal. All weapons, under normal physical and chemical reactions, are normal. It's the same principle. Using supernatural powers to create a superstandard weapon, poison. Yin Xiaoxi nodded and said, Then, can we control the timing of the poison? Since no one entered the guest house last night, it's also possible that the victim was poisoned before he moved in. We can't rule out that possibility, and it's very likely, the commissioner said after giving it some thought. Yin Xiaoxi pinched his forehead and said with a bitter smile, In that case, I'm afraid we don't have enough time to investigate, and we don't have enough time either. If this is not the only case, the commissioner had also thought of the terrifying part. The poison that could turn a person's body into pus was really terrifying. Besides, they still did not know how the poison was used. I'll bring some samples back immediately. I hope the headquarters can analyze its medicinal properties as soon as possible. As soon as possible, I'll arrange for someone to escort you back. Yin Xiaoxi nodded and said, there's no time to lose. Set off now. I'll explain to the headquarters. After sending the commissioner off, Yin Xiaoxi immediately ordered someone to check on the chefs in the guest house and the waiters who were in charge of distributing the food. She also checked on all the water sources in the guest house. We get the ingredients from the farmer's market every day. We don't have to go out to buy them. It's none of my business. I just left after delivering the food to this floor. As usual, they brought the food back to their rooms themselves. It's really none of my business. They checked one by one, mainly on the victim's food, the water source that he drank, and the people that he came into contact with. However, they still did not find anything. They did not find the method or the person who poisoned the victim. All of this seemed to indicate that the victim had already been poisoned before he entered the guest house. The members of the diplomatic mission rushed to Yin Xiaoxi agitatedly and demanded an explanation from Kelowna. Their great priest had died in this place, and this was the most vicious provocation to their tribe. Yin Xiaoxi was not afraid that the diplomatic mission would cause a commotion. However, if this incident caused the transcendent tribes in the African continent to develop negative feelings toward the Chinese who were investing in the African continent and secretly sabotaging them, it would be quite a headache. Don't worry, we'll definitely find the culprit. Yin Xiaoxi had no choice but to promise. This is not only about you. This is also a provocation to the Kelowna authority. We won't let this go. It was an official statement. So, at this time, Section Chief Yin directly changed the topic. In order to find the murderer as soon as possible, I hope that you can cooperate with our investigation. From now on, everyone in the guest house must be under the supervision of the administration until we find the murderer. Everyone here is suspected of murder. What did you say? The diplomatic mission members who had lost their priest were enraged as they were the victims. Faced with the ferocious grassland warriors, Section Chief Yin was very straightforward. He glanced around, and the agents around him waved their hands in unison. They did not take out their conventional firearms and only waved the folding sticks in their hands. However, these were sticks that could release high-voltage electricity. In a city that had lost supernatural powers, there were not many supernatural beings who could resist technological weapons. As for combat, the authority had never lacked talent in that field. Seeing that everyone was silent, Yin Xiaoxi calmly said, "Thank you for your cooperation. Don't worry, apart from not being able to leave the guest house and not being able to contact the outside world, you are free to move around here. However, I hope that if we need any of you to assist us, you will be the first to come." With that, after the angry grassland warriors were temporarily taken away, Yin Xiaoxi finally had time to calm down and think about their next move. By the way, has old Fu arrived at the scene of the incident? Yin Xiaoxi suddenly asked. We've already arrived. Boss Fu is currently investigating. We should have news back soon, the subordinate quickly replied. Yin Xiaoxi nodded. As one of his assistants, Fu Mingxian was supposed to come with him. However, on the way to the guest house, Yin Xiaoxi received news that one of the authorities' drones had been shot down in the sky. The person who shot it had already taken a photo, but it was a rather unfamiliar face. The authorities' database did not have any relevant records, so Section Chief Yin could only arrange for Fu Mingxian to go out of the city to investigate. Got it. Yin Xiaoxi nodded and then said, "Give me all the surveillance footage of the guest house for the past week. I want to see it myself." "I'll do it right away." The jeep soon drove into a small valley. There were 3 people in the jeep. Apart from Fu Mingxian, there were 2 other mid-level agents from the authority. The 2 mid-level agents were obviously Fu Mingxian's confidants. Boss Fu, according to the last location where the signal disappeared, it should be around here. Fu Mingxian nodded. Then, another subordinate quickly said, "We detected a wave of abnormal energy in front that is weakening." They soon arrived at the place where the wave came from and found a big pit. In the big pit, they even found a pair of footprints. This seems to be caused by the impact of falling from a high altitude. Who could be so hard? They carefully observed the surroundings of the big pit. There are several different sets of footprints here. It seems that the person went in this direction and shouldn't have gone far. If we chase now, we might be able to catch up. Let's track it and take a look. Fu Mingxian nodded and then said, call back and tell the section chief the results of the preliminary investigation here. I seem to have smelled the scent of a demon. There should be at least one demon living nearby. Maybe we can ask something. Then, Fu Mingxian leaped into the forest. This was no longer a restricted area, so it was much more convenient for them to do things here. Searching according to the smell, Fu Mingxian quickly found a cave. There were still some electrical appliances inside. The cave was full of demon aura. There was indeed a demon living here for a long time. However, he didn't find any demon, so he had to go back the way he came. However, when Fu Mingxian returned to the place where he found the deep pit, a strong smell of blood filled the air. Fu Mingxian was shocked and quickened his pace, only to find that two of his subordinates had died tragically in the jeep at this moment. Their heads had been cut off, and they were directly hung on the ground by branches. A chill instantly spread all over Fu Mingxian's body. In this horror, Fu Mingxian subconsciously turned around, but he saw that a black shadow had appeared behind him without him knowing. Fu Mingxian was shocked, but the black shadow flashed and disappeared from his sight. The senior agent of the agency stood motionless at this time. After a long time, his head slowly fell from his neck. The investigation team of 3 was wiped out. In an antique courtyard, Kelowna's Shinryu finally saw the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, Zixing. This young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, who had been strictly raised since childhood, was still quite respectful to Kelowna's dragon god. He directly bowed when he saw her. What a sensible guy, Long Shua thought in her heart. He is much more sensible than the group of shameless people in front of her house. Look at the little girl of the Greedy Wolf clan, TSK. Is Zhuefeng okay? As soon as he sat down, Kelowna's Shinryu didn't directly ask about the metal fragments. Instead, he asked about Zhuefeng, the reincarnation of the current Greedy Wolf star. Master Taixingjun is fine. Zixing knelt in front of Long Shua at this time and said sternly, Master Taixingjun is currently in the clan shrine, comprehending the magical power of Greedy Wolf Star. Long Shua didn't have much reaction to this. She just nodded and said indifferently, it's fine as long as the kid is willing. So, why did you ask me to come? The thing Mo Xiaofei sent me should be your idea, right? Mo Xiaofei, who was sitting next to her, had to smile awkwardly, then quickly said, Master, I'll go outside and get you a glass of water. Long Shua didn't ask him to stay at this time. If this was Mo Xiaofei's matter, he wouldn't deliberately ask her to come to Greedy Wolf Zixing. Obviously, Zixing wanted her to come through Mo Xiaofei. TSK, this shameless girl is so bad. After Mo Xiaofei went out, Long Shua looked at Zixing and said directly, Tell me, why are you looking for me? Greedy Wolf young master smiled mysteriously. Before this, don't you want to know the origin of this metal fragment? The words engraved on it are the most ancient characters of Kelowna. Say it or not. Long Shua snorted coldly and threw the box with the fragment in her hand in front of Zixing. I'll give you 1 minute. Find a way to keep me here. The young master of Greedy Wolf clan looked dignified and said slowly, Master Long Jun, do you know the Immortal Palace? Immortal Palace? Long Shua couldn't help being stunned. What's that? A new organization made by some boar guys? Zixing shook her head, then said seriously, I'm talking about the legendary Immortal Palace of the Heavenly Court. The Immortal Palace where there are real immortals. You little girl, who are you? Shinryu of Kelowna couldn't help but open his mouth at this time. They probably didn't quarrel. Mo Xiaofei was looking at the sky worriedly in the small courtyard outside. In fact, he didn't know what was given to his master. He just did it at the request of Zixing. Well, seeing that Zhuefeng had an ambiguous relationship with Zixing, it's not easy to be a big brother, Mo Xiaofei thought. At this moment, a figure slowly walked into this small courtyard. Mo Xiaofei heard the footsteps. He turned around and found that the person was the man who stood in the stance he saw before. Hello, you are? The man smiled at this time. Someone wants to see you. Is it convenient? See me? Mo Xiaofei was surprised. Who wants to see me? You'll know when you see her. The man blinked and said, "She asked me to invite you. If I can't invite you, I may have to stand in the horse stance for the whole day. You see, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I haven't drunk a drop of water yet." Standing at 5 o'clock in the morning until now, he hasn't drunk a drop of water. This guy is so miserable. At the same time, he can bear hardships, Mo Xiaofei thought. Mo Xiaofei thought for a while and said, "Okay, I'll go with you. Where is she?" "Please follow me." Song Howard smiled slightly and said, "By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Song Howard. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS 1/1. Chapter 1922. There were many speculations, but so far, there was no unified and certain statement. All they knew was that it only appeared after the Mount Tai incident. There's a crack, and this thing was picked up from inside. Zixing looked at Long Shaw with a solemn expression. We could only reach a dilapidated ruin, with traces left after the battle everywhere. In the area that we could explore, we did not see any corpses. The whole place seemed to be empty. What we saw was a place called the Southern Heavenly Gate. The Southern Sky Gate, the legendary gate of the Immortal Palace. Kelowna Shinryu did not speak. She just looked at Zixing blankly, as if to distinguish the truth in her words. "Lord Dragon King, do you think that Zixing is making up a story?" Zixing suddenly asked. Longshaw shook her head and said indifferently, "I'm just curious why you encountered such a thing." Zixing was a little confused by this question. "Is there anything wrong with this?" Longshaw shook her head again. At this time, she had taken the fragment in her hand again. She carefully stroked the engraving on it. "Do you want me to continue to explore this space suspected to be the Immortal Palace with you?" "Fengdu Ghost City." Zixing suddenly said the name of a place and said meaningfully, "I know the origin of Fengdu Ghost City, Lord Dragon King." Longshaw's expression changed slightly, but she suddenly smiled and said, "You little girl, it seems that you have done your homework. Then the question is, why do you think I will agree? I hope Lord Dragon King can consider it." At this time, Zixing bowed in front of Kelowna Shinryu. She did not raise her head. "This is a very suitable place for us to live. Today's world is not suitable for us to continue to live. Even in this era of spiritual chi, I'm afraid it will only be a flash in the pan." "You said a flash in the pan?" Kelowna Shinryu narrowed her eyes. Purple Star still did not raise her head. She only said softly, "Purple Star, after all, is Star-Lord Covetous Wolf's sacrifice." Purple Star can also see some of the astronomical phenomena. "I know that the clans of the four divine beasts all have the intention to invite Lord Dragon Monarch, hoping to obtain an autonomous region for the Demon Clan in this era. Compared to their request, the Greedy Wolf Clan only wishes to obtain a place where they can struggle at death's door, just like City Master Zhao's Ghost City. Since Lord Dragon Monarch can help City Lord Xiao to build the Fengdu Ghost City from the broken underworld, then I helped Xiao Shengma just to settle down the millions of ghosts in the divine Great Land who have nowhere to go." Longshaw said in a deep voice, "When the underworld is destroyed, thousands of wandering ghosts have no place to settle down, let alone reincarnate. After accumulating for a long time, it will only lead to a disaster in Kelowna. How can it be compared to your clan?" She seemed to have expected such an answer. At this time, she was not in a hurry, but her attitude was more humble. "Lord Dragon Monarch, if you can build a place suitable for the Greedy Wolf Clan to live in this space that is suspected to be the Immortal Palace, it will also be suitable for the other demon clans to live in. Since it is difficult for us to integrate into the human race, how about we withdraw from this era? Just like the so-called inhuman realm in the West. Lord Dragon Monarch is the true dragon of the countless living beings in the Divine Land. Lord Dragon Monarch needs to follow the general trend. But as long as we haven't all been annihilated, aren't we considered one of the countless living beings? Lord Dragon Monarch, please consider Zixing's request." Kelowna Shinryu pondered and did not speak. Time passed in silence, just like that. After a long time, Longshaw sighed and said, "Speaking of which, this is only your wishful thinking." Zixing, the young master of the Greedy Wolf Clan, slightly moved his eyes. It seemed that from this sentence, the disappointment on his face could not be concealed. Whether it is a suitable place to live or not is not up to you alone. Longshaw immediately said expressionlessly, building an inhuman realm of the East. Do you think it is a child playing with sand? Without a perfect plan, how can it be built just because you want to? Do you know how long it took to create the inhuman domain? Do you know how much effort the Magician Association spent on it? Lord Dragon Monarch, you mean? Zixing's mood, which had fallen to the bottom, was lifted in an instant. Longshaw rolled her eyes and said, after the summit meeting, I will go on a field trip. The young master of the Greedy Wolf clan was ecstatic and was about to bow down. But Longshaw stretched out her hand and sighed. Have you ever thought that I won't consider it at all? I know Lord Dragon Monarch won't. Zixing said softly, I know that after the founding of the new era, there was a plan to wipe out the demon clan. It was Lord Long who resisted behind the scenes. Longshaw didn't say anything, just glared and said, if you wanted to go on a field trip, you have to pay for the trip, food, and lodging expenses. Appearance fees are calculated separately. These are all reasonable, right? Probably. Mo Xiaofei followed Song Haoran to a rather elegant quiet room, where he saw a masked woman in white. The face of the masked woman could be vaguely seen through the gauze. She knelt and waited as if she had been waiting for a long time. When the door was opened, the eyes of the masked woman were focused on Mo Xiaofei's body, or his face. If it weren't for the existence of the restrictive spell, Mo Xiaofei would be able to hear the masked woman murmuring such a sentence with his super hearing. So similar. There is such a similarity in the world. Song Haoran walked in first, followed by Mo Xiaofei. When they came to the masked woman, Song Haoran said casually, I've brought him to you. The masked woman nodded, then said indifferently, Okay, you can leave and continue to do your stance outside. The young master of the Song family suddenly widened his eyes, pointing at himself with an inconceivable expression. My princess, are you so greedy? Did I not serve you well enough? Saying some frivolous words with an aggrieved expression. This guy was also a talent, right? Mo Xiaofei dared not to speak at this time. The masked woman raised her head slightly, glancing at Song Haoran. Young Master Song shrugged. I'll be outside. Call me if you need anything. Before leaving, Song Haoran patted Mo Xiaofei's shoulder gently, winking and whispering, Little brother, watch your words. Don't talk nonsense. Mo Xiaofei still didn't understand the situation at this time, but he saw that the masked woman wanted to see him. However, he couldn't remember if he had ever crossed paths with this masked woman. If he had never seen her, why would she look for him? Looking at the masked woman who was staring at him strangely, Mo Xiaofei said tentatively, I'll sit down. You sit down. The masked woman said in a low voice, seeming to be hesitant. Mo Xiaofei sat down slowly. He originally planned to sit cross-legged, but when he saw the masked woman's straight kneeling posture, he immediately changed to the same posture as her. But he was not used to this sitting posture, so it was a little awkward after a while. The masked woman didn't speak, just looking at him. Excuse me, why do you want to see me? Mo Xiaofei couldn't help asking. How old are you this year? The masked woman suddenly asked. Me? Mo Xiaofei subconsciously opened his mouth, thinking for a while, almost 18. Do you have any relatives at home? The masked woman asked again. Mo Xiaofei was a little vigilant. Why do you ask this? The masked woman shook her head, saying indifferently, I just want to find some topics. Isn't this what you want? Don't let this place be too quiet. But she didn't ask about his relatives directly, did she? You haven't answered me. Why do you want to see me? Mo Xiaofei came straight to the point. Do I know you? No, we haven't met before today. The masked woman said softly. Then, you look very similar to an old friend of mine. The masked woman thought for a while, so I'm interested in you. You don't need to panic. I won't hurt you. I just want to talk to you. If this makes you feel embarrassed, I'll ask Song Haoran to send you back. That's not necessary. Mo Xiaofei shook his head, asking curiously, Do I really look like the old friend you mentioned? Like when he was young? The masked woman nodded, but he still looks a little immature. His eyes can hold everything. He sounds like a very powerful person. Emo Xiaofei squeezed his eyes with his fingers awkwardly. Does he look like this? The masked woman didn't say a word. Emo Xiaofei's awkwardness turned into a hollow laugh. Well, I'm just kidding. You could be more confident. The masked woman suddenly said. Emo Xiaofei was stunned. The masked woman said indifferently, "What's your name?" Emo Xiaofei. Okay, I'll keep it in mind. The topic seemed to have stopped here. The masked woman didn't say anything, but kept staring at Emo Xiaofei. As time went by, she even seemed to be absent-minded. She seemed to be immersed in memories. This was the only feeling Emo Xiaofei had at this time. So be it. Maybe she really thought of an old friend when she saw me and wanted to reminisce. I'll help if I can. I don't have anything important to do anyway. Emo Xiaofei began to calm down. He calmly accepted the masked woman's gaze. He didn't have many thoughts in his mind at this time. However, the quiet room was too quiet. Emo Xiaofei unconsciously felt a little sleepy. His eyes gradually became hazy. Behind the veil of the masked woman, there seemed to be a sense of familiarity to that faintly discernible face. His eyes gradually darkened. Chuyong, like a name. Who? Like, his head suddenly sank. Emo Xiaofei quickly raised his head, then looked around nervously. He was still in the quiet room, and the masked woman was kneeling in front of him. Emo Xiaofei quickly wiped his lips, saying embarrassedly, "I'm sorry. I slept too late last night. Unconsciously. I've been sleeping for a long time." Just a moment. The masked woman said indifferently, "It's late. You go outside and find Song Howard. He will send you back." Okay. Emo Xiaofei nodded subconsciously. He really wanted to escape from this strange silence, especially since the masked woman gave him an indescribable weird feeling. She said he looked like her old friend when he was young. Who could he look like? Everyone said he looked like his dad. Could it be that this masked woman knew his dad? But his dad was just an injured and retired firefighter. There was nothing special about him. Emo Xiaofei pushed open the door of the quiet room with a head full of doubts. Suddenly, he felt something and turned around. He saw the masked woman who had closed her eyes slowly open her eyes at this time. "What's the matter?" "That." Emo Xiaofei hesitated. "I'll leave my phone number to the uncle outside. If you still want to remember your old friend, I'm fine with it. It's a pleasure to help others. Well, goodbye." She watched Emo Xiaofei leave until he finally disappeared. Then she took off the veil on her face, saying softly, "Not like, but also like." Not long after, Song Howard directly entered the quiet room. He didn't personally send Emo Xiaofei back to the courtyard where the greedy wolf tribe lived. It was Emo Xiaofei who refused, saying he could go back by himself. "What's so special about this kid that you want to see him in person?" Song Howard asked directly. "Help me do one thing," the masked woman said indifferently. "Say it." Song Howard shrugged. "You know I can't refuse you. Help me keep an eye on this Emo Xiaofei." The masked woman thought for a while. "Don't let him know. I just want to know something about his life." "Life?" Song Howard looked quite surprised. Then he smiled. "I always feel that there's something special about him that attracts you." The young master of Song family directly squatted in front of the masked woman, getting close to her. The masked woman remained motionless. Song Howard reached out to touch the veil of the masked woman, as if he was going to lift the veil in the next moment. Through the veil, he gently scanned her face. "This is the first time I've seen your eyes like this. You're too close," the masked woman said indifferently. "I still want to get closer." Song Howard chuckled. "Future." The masked woman's eyes turned cold. She waved her hand quickly. Even though she couldn't use her strength, she still had her fighting skills. This move was extremely fierce. Facing this fierce move, Song Howard slightly raised the corner of his mouth, directly grabbing the masked woman's wrist. A hint of surprise appeared in the eyes of the masked woman. The young master of the Song family directly let go of the other's wrist at this time. He blinked and said, "You can't always be beaten up, right?" "Song Howard, how dare you? I'll be outside," young Master Song said abruptly while stepping back, Call me my princess." It was not until the eldest son of the Song family left the quiet room that the masked princess of the Qin kingdom slowly exhaled. She gently rubbed her wrist and said in a low voice, "If the world is in chaos, you will definitely be the demon star who brings disaster to the world." When Emo Xiaofei returned to Zixing's residence, Long Shuo had persistently disguised herself and waited. Long Shuo didn't even ask where Emo Xiaofei went. She looked preoccupied. The master and disciple didn't say anything and just left Song Dynasty Hotel. The agents of the administration didn't dare to stop them when they entered the door. Naturally, they didn't dare to stop them now. They just acted as if nothing had happened. "By the way, master, what's Chu Yang?" In the arranged car, Emo Xiaofei suddenly asked. "Chu Yang." Kelowna's Shinryu was startled. "What Chu Yang?" "It means literally the sun in the morning." "Are you a monk?" "Like a name." Emo Xiaofei shook his head. "It's fine if master doesn't know. It's not important." Long Shuo shook her head and said casually, "In ancient times, there was a saying that the period before the winter solstice to the beginning of spring was Chuyang, which is the so-called birth of the sun." "I see." Emo Xiaofei nodded. "In addition, there's another metaphor." Kelowna's Shinryu glanced at Emo Xiaofei and said meaningfully, "Sometimes it's also compared to the Golden Age." Chapter 1923. When Miss Song of the Song family came to the meeting place, she knew it would be like this. The meeting place had been booked by Zhong Luoyue. Zhong Luoyue was the only one sitting in the restaurant at this time. She arranged a whole team of people to stand outside the door. Song Ying also asked her team of bodyguards to stand outside the door. The two sides were clearly opposite each other. She flipped her hair and walked in with her bag. Meeting alone like this, there was no problem at all, right? It was just that when these two princesses of noble families met, there was no hint of affection to be found. Instead, it was as if gunpowder was sprinkled all around them. When they were young, Zhong Luoyue studied abroad, and Song Ying later studied in the same college, which was the old college in Britain where Boss Luo went to study. Zhong Luoyue entered the college earlier than Song Ying, and was the leader of the student union. Excellent women always appreciated excellent women. This saying was completely wrong when it came to these two princesses who were almost the same in all aspects. It was as if they were born to be enemies. It was also possible that they had already been enemies in their previous lives. During the days when they were studying, it could be said that they were quite noisy. Later, Zhong Luoyue graduated, and Miss Song of the Song family finally won the war. As the saying goes, the survivor is the king. She won after getting rid of her opponent. "You call me out from afar. Don't tell me you just want to see me." Song Ying sat down directly. In fact, she and Zhong Luoyue should have met once, even earlier. Originally, at the beginning of the year, there should have been a world underground gambling competition. For this competition, Song Ying had gone to invite the legendary god of gamblers to come back. However, after the Mount Tai incident, the world's abnormal events increased to the point that it had to be announced to the world. Therefore, the gambling competition was suspended indefinitely. "What's wrong?" "As a senior, I want to catch up with a junior." "Is there a problem?" Zhong Luoyue smiled and said, "If you do this, I will feel that the years we spent together on campus are quite cheap." "Cheap? It's already good enough that I'm not whoring you for free." Song Ying sneered. She was the type to charge around recklessly. This princess of the Song dynasty wasn't interested in too many overt schemes. With the support of the Song family behind her, she had always been very flamboyant. This kind of rich and powerful young lady would often suffer a lot of losses, but she really couldn't withstand the strength and luck of the Song family. Whether it was old Master Song or Song Howren, they were all protecting this precious daughter of the Song family from behind. She was unruly, but not willful. She finished her studies early and returned to take care of the small family business. Moreover, she was well organized and lived a more realistic life than many people. Zhong Luoyue was different. She was also a young lady of a wealthy family, but the environment she grew up in determined that she could either be a family vase with no thoughts of her own or be the current Tang dynasty empress. Only by stepping on her two brothers could she obtain freedom of body and mind. She couldn't stand Song Ying's flamboyance, and Song Ying couldn't stand her depth. It was as if they were really enemies in their previous lives, and then fate arranged for them to meet again in this life. The two young ladies who knew each other very well didn't exchange too many pleasantries. Song Ying even planned to ridicule the other party, but unexpectedly, Zhong Luoyue didn't have any intention of fighting back. "I really just want to see you," she said. Do you have something to say?" Song Ying was startled and looked at the other party in surprise. "Drink with me. I want to drink some wine today," Zhong Luoyue said softly. "Do you think I'll drink with you just because you said so?" "Why?" Song Ying sneered. Zhong Luoyue narrowed her eyes and said, "Because in so many years, you have never beaten me in drinking. Is that enough?" "Wine server." The young lady of the Song family exploded. "I hate this bitch so much." Fortunately, it was only because they were born to dislike each other, and not because they were fighting over men. Otherwise, I would have shot her. In fact, she even brought the gun and hid it in her skirt. "Drink." It was unknown how much time had passed, but there were many empty red wine bottles on the table. The young lady of the Song family was now drunk. Her eyes were hazy, and her stomach was surging. She held a wine bottle in one hand and pressed the other hand on the table, staring at Zhong Luoyue like a tiger eyeing its prey. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that Zhong Luoyue was still a girl who didn't blush and didn't panic after drinking so much wine. When did this bitch become so good at drinking? Song Ying shook her head hard. She was supposed to be the queen of the school's prom every year during the carnival. "You can't drink anymore? It feels like it's just the beginning." Zhong Luoyue shook the wine glass in her hand and smiled. "If you can't drink anymore, let someone send you back. I don't care." Song Ying looked up and stared at Zhong Luoyue like a tigress, but soon she knocked her head on the table. How could a normal person hold on after drinking so much wine? When Zhong Luoyue saw this, he stood up and strode slowly to Song Ying's side with his fingers on the long table. She looked at Song Ying's wine-red neck and stroked it gently with her fingers. Then she slowly bent down. "This is a really good place," she whispered in her ear. "The truth is bitten down like this. When you wake up, your expression should be very interesting." But there was no way to open the fangs of vampire. Zhong Luoyue smiled with a little pity. So this was a really good place. Even if she wanted to be a vampire, she couldn't do it. In fact, she forced herself to get up in the morning. It was similar to humans staying up late. She didn't know if it was because of the anti-magic effect, but she was surprised to find that her dislike for the daytime seemed to be reduced a lot. Deadhead, you're a deadhead. It's been so long. The phone." These were Song Ying's unclear words in her sleep. However, Zhong Luoyue could hear it. He could even hear the indignation contained in these dreams. What kind of man can make the princess of the Song dynasty forget herself like this? Zhong Luoyue seemed to be interested and directly sat on the table in front of Song Ying. She knew Song Ying's style. During the years in the academy, Song Ying had many girlfriends but never stopped a man from getting close to her. Of course, Zhong Luoyue didn't think Song Ying didn't like men. It was just that it was difficult for men to break into her heart. Suddenly, Zhong Luoyue's memory flashed in her mind. She remembered that she met a young man who attended the banquet together with Song Ying in the manor of the god of gamblers, who lived in seclusion in South America. There were many men around Song Ying, and it was very common in the academy. But Zhong Luoyue had only seen one man who could make the little princess of the Song family unable to do anything, and even feel like she was being led by the nose. Of course, that was when she and Song Ying were in the same place. At other times, Zhong Luoyue wouldn't know clearly, but it was enough for Zhong Luoyue to guess something. That person, Zhong Luoyue tried hard to recall the appearance of the mysterious young man beside Song Ying, but she still couldn't remember his appearance. But in her memory, many things seemed to have happened between them in the manner of the god of gamblers. There was always an indescribable feeling in her heart. It was a very familiar feeling. Zhong Luoyue looked at the drunk Song Ying. She really didn't have any other thoughts today. She just wanted to see an old friend and see what kind of attitude she, who was now used to the identity of a vampire, would have towards the people she used to know. This kind of attitude couldn't be imagined by imagination. Only by personally experiencing it could one understand the subtleties of it. She didn't see Song Ying as an enemy now. She didn't even have the thought of suppressing her. Instead, she felt it was quite interesting to see Song Ying gnashing her teeth at her. Maybe after 30 or 50 years, Song Ying would have aged, and she would still be the same. This could only be a memory fragment that was worth recalling. I am not a human anymore. Zhong Luoyue laughed at herself. She picked up the spoon and gently tapped the wine glass on the table. Soon a man came in. The man was quite respectful. Inform Miss Song's bodyguard to come in and take Miss Song back, Zhong Luoyue said indifferently. Tell Miss Song that I'm very happy with today's party. Yes. Very quickly, a group of bodyguards came over in fear and trepidation and carefully helped the little princess of the Song family leave. Although they were very curious about the background of this beautiful woman with an incomparably strong aura to actually be able to drink with their little princess, they still did not dare to ask and hurriedly sent Song Ying away. After Song Ying left, Zhong Luoyue went into the washroom alone, saying that she wanted to touch up her makeup and asked people to wait outside. At this time, only the sound of the faucet could be heard, and Zhong Luoyue had already leaned over the basin, vomiting. After a long time, Zhong Luoyue raised her head with a pale face. The body of a vampire was indeed unable to digest food other than blood and blood products. Zhong Luoyue wiped her lips, leaning against the basin, slowly sliding down and sitting down, muttering to herself, "In the future, this kind of boring competition should be banned." It turned out that it was not easy for a vampire to get drunk. When she came out of the washroom, Zhong Luoyue's face had returned to normal. The people she brought out today were actually members of the Magician Association. Of course, they weren't the noble magicians of the Magician Association, but the followers or apprentices of the magicians. In fact, Zhong Luoyue's identity was similar. In the eyes of the members of the Magician Association, she was the personal attendant of the last disciple of the Radiance Tower, Miss Elizabeth. But this personal attendant status was obviously several levels higher. "Miss you, we should go back, or else the people from the Kelowna administration will come and find us. We only have half a day to go out," one of the followers of the magicians suggested. "There's still some time." Zhong Luoyue shook her head and said, "I want to walk around the riverside. I can go by myself. You guys go buy things for your respective masters." "Okay, Miss you, be careful." They didn't have the obligation to protect Miss you all the time, but within the scope of the permitted scope and friendship, they gave her some convenience to tighten the relationship between them. They parted here. Speaking of which, when the two female bodyguards helped Song Ying to the underground parking lot, a small interlude happened. It was like this. The two female bodyguards supported Miss Song while the other bodyguards went to get the car. However, when they were about to help Song Ying get on the car, a truck suddenly lost control and rushed over. It looked like they were about to crash into each other, but the truck driver suddenly twisted the steering wheel at the last moment and narrowly avoided the collision. But the sudden twist of the truck seemed to have knocked someone down. The bodyguards clearly saw a figure being hit, but when the truck driver got off to check, he didn't find anyone injured on the ground. The truck driver didn't want to cause any trouble, so he hurriedly drove away. As for the bodyguards, they didn't care and hurriedly sent Miss Song Ying away. What they didn't know was that after they left, a figure directly climbed out from the other side of the wall. It was a tall and thin man. At this moment, the tall and thin man's neck was severely crooked to one side, however. He held his head with both hands and straightened it. Patting the dust off his body, he appeared to be deep in thought. After a while, another man arrived in the parking lot and quickly came to the side of the tall and thin man. "Fail!" Shaking his head, the lanky male replied, "Originally, I wanted to take him away, but a truck suddenly rushed out. Aren't dimensional observers supposed to be plagued with misfortune and die young? Why does this guy seem to have such good luck? I haven't been able to find a good opportunity to act recently. I'm considering whether to directly appear and snatch her away. Maybe it's just a coincidence. If we directly appear and snatch her away, I'm afraid we'll be beaten up into a hornet's nest before we even touch her. This forbidden space is too strange." The latter man waved his hand. Let's not talk about this first. I can sense a companion nearby. The tall and thin man frowned. Companion? Who? It seems to be Wolfgang. The latter man casually said. Furthermore, he sent out a distress signal. Distress signal? The tall and thin man couldn't help but be stunned. What happened? How would I know? I'm not familiar with Wolfgang and have only seen him a few times. Should I save him? I can't talk to this crazy guy. He also doesn't like us, right? The tall and thin man shrugged. Furthermore, we still have the throne mission. Besides, Wolfgang is on the side of Archimedes. That means... The latter man shrugged. The tall and thin man said indifferently, let him fend for himself. Japan, a certain airport. A young man in a suit and leather shoes with gold-rimmed glasses came to the door of the smoking area. He saw a child of about 10 years old squatting in front of the door, reading a comic book. The young man frowned. He didn't understand why his boss, teacher Cha Tion, would add 2 more people at the last minute. Furthermore, one of them was a child. We're about to board the plane. Go in and ask your guardian to come out. How troublesome. The young man abnormally hated the smell of smoke and was extremely unwilling to go in. He stared at the child squatting on the ground and said, hurry up. However, the child didn't seem to hear him at all. He turned the comic book page by page. I said, go and ask your guardian to come out. Do you hear me? Kid. The young man took the comic book from the child's hand and said in a deep voice. Seeing the comic book disappear, the child was stunned at first. Then he raised his head. The child's eyes were rolling crazily at this time. As soon as the young man met the child's eyes, he trembled all over. His legs seemed to be petrified. He instinctively stepped back, but his legs really seemed to be rooted and didn't move at all. His body suddenly collapsed and sat down. Demon, demon, he wanted to shout loudly. But at this time, a hand directly covered his mouth and pinched it tightly. It was Natsuya Suzuki who was smoking in the smoking room. If you say one more word, I'll break your neck here. Natsuya Suzuki cracked his sawtooth-like teeth and said, I'm very good at this. When I break your neck, I can also pull out your bones bit by bit. Can you imagine that scene? It's bloody and smooth. With that, Natsuya Suzuki pressed his hand on the young man's head. The young man widened his eyes and trembled even more. Natsuya Suzuki suddenly released his hand at this time, then pointed to his eyes, and then slowly pointed to the young man's eyebrows. Shoo! Help! 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 The young man turned around at once, rolling and crawling to escape. On the way, he even fell to the ground several times and screamed all the way. Natsuya Suzuki shook his head, picked up the comic book on the ground, and returned to the child. Here, troublesome kid. Hee hee. Natsuya Suzuki rolled his eyes, grabbed the child's collar with one hand, and lifted him up. Let's go, kid. The flight to China. If there were no accidents, it would arrive in the evening. It was very fast to fly from Japan. Chapter 1924. This so-called soul seal was not unbreakable, but the current situation did not allow for it. Wolfgang appeared to be rather irritated, his fingers flicking randomly as if they were neurotic. He needed to leave the modern world and release 3 times more power than the limit of the soul seal in an instant to break through the control of the soul seal. This was not difficult for Wolfgang, but the premise was that he needed to leave the modern world. Paradise Lost Eternal Night Palace's doorplate was something that every supreme-level person in the organization would bring with them when they went out. Wolfgang naturally had one as well. Actually, he could leave at any time and enter the crack between dimensions to release his power and break through Mr. Song's control, but he did not intend to do so. He was unable to pull Lucifer, the king of hell, into the organization. If he returned like this, he would become a joke. The most important thing was that Paradise Lost Eternal Night Palace's doorplate was actually a semi-disposable tool. Every time it was activated, the gatekeeper of Eternal Night Palace would have to recharge it. Normally, the gatekeeper would have to report the circumstances under which the doorplate was used. This was actually to collect information about the dangers of different subworlds. Normally, supreme-level people would activate the doorplate and leave after completing the mission. However, there were also situations where they could not solve the danger by activating the doorplate. What they needed to collect information about such dangerous situations was to accumulate experience so that they could wait for the next mission or other members of the organization to effectively avoid the same danger. If he returned and found out that his freedom was forcibly restrained by a supreme-level being of a subworld, that would be embarrassing. You spicy chicken. Probably the entire organization would be filled with such an atmosphere. Thinking about this, Wolfgang even regretted sending out the distress signal. He hoped that there were no other members of the organization nearby. At this time, Gong Fanqing was still explaining the rules of being around Mr. Song, but Wolfgang was obviously absent-minded. Generally speaking, as long as you do not intend to betray his honor, your life will not be too bad, and I will not make things difficult for you. After all, we are acquaintances. Miss Gong, your words sound very insincere, using such a method to treat your benefactor. Charlotte sneered. No matter what, Gong Fanqing said expressionlessly, I am only loyal to his honor. How precious can loyalty under slavery be? Charlotte said indifferently. It's not valuable. Gong Fanqing said indifferently. But you need to carry it with you at all times. Moreover, his honor is indeed the Son of Heaven. Even if you pledge your loyalty to him, it is not a disgrace. Gong Fanqing didn't feel like she was living under someone else's roof. In a person's life, some people were willing to be ordinary and hide in the mountains. But there were also people who entered the imperial court and were conferred titles and ministers. They just wanted to have a stage to show what they had learned in their life. This was what the martial artists of her era thought, and she was the demoness of that era. Jiang Hu could not tolerate such a cruel demoness like her, but the imperial court needed such a ruthless pawn. In any case, we don't have any leeway now. Charlotte shook her head and said helplessly, Then I can only work for Mr. Song. This kind of attitude was within Gong Fanqing's expectation. She then looked at Wolfgang, seemingly asking, Do I have any other choice? At this time, Wolfgang laughed and said, I only hope that Miss Gong can treat me better. I am already satisfied. Jinjin was like an infatuated person, but it was a pity that he was too dissolute. Gong Fanqing said with a charming smile, I can't be compared to those obedient girls. I have a wild temperament, and I love to play with handsome young masters the most. I am a vile creature who can't get away from the world of mortals. I am not the kind of person that Mr. likes. Wolfgang smiled indifferently. Right at this time, a wave of air spread over, and Mr. Song could be seen walking out of the wooden house in the forest slowly. Gong Fanqing was the first to kneel down. This servant greets his honor. However, Wolfgang and Charlotte were still standing. Mr. Song didn't care at this time. He waved his hand and signaled Gong Fanqing to stand up, then said indifferently, I heard that Kelowna is going to hold a worldwide conference, and the situation of the world will change because of this. The three of you, come with me to take a look at this storm. After saying this, Mr. Song asked Wolfgang and Charlotte to wait on the other side of the island. Is there anything wrong with these two? When only Mr. Song and Gong Fanqing were left, he suddenly asked. Reporting to his honor, at present, although Wolfgang and Charlotte are unwilling, they are after all smart people, and know that they can't make things difficult for themselves. For the time being, it is still considered a cooperation. Mr. Song nodded, and no one knew what he was thinking. What is his honor's plan from now on? Gong Fanqing asked at this time. Mr. Song said, Times have changed. The world today is no longer the world of my dynasty. However, this world is in chaos. It may not be. Mr. Song didn't say anything, but Gong Fanqing vaguely sensed his thoughts. Her expression couldn't help but become serious. She said in a deep voice, I'm willing to be your lackey. It's too early to talk about this now. Mr. Song shook his head. But I do need to make some preparations. I need some capable people who can work for me. The world is so big. Capable people are mostly arrogant and conceited. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for them to. There will always be some people, Mr. Song said with a faint smile, who will submit for power. Gong Fanqing couldn't help but be stunned. At this moment, a figure appeared in a flash. It was Wolfgang, who had just left not long ago. He frowned and said, There is a ship on the sea. It seems to be coming here. I know. Mr. Song nodded. I asked them to come. Did His Honor call them over? Gong Fanqing couldn't help but be startled. They are from an aristocratic family in the capital. Mr. Song said indifferently. After you lured Qin Shiyu, the successor of Huanjin's sect, out to sea, I traveled for a while. I went to the capital and gained something. I'll tell you later. As he spoke, Mr. Song suddenly took out a phone from his pocket. He held the phone in his hand and pulled it away from his body. Then he tapped on it with his finger and said to the phone, "You can log in now. I'll board the ship immediately." Gong Fanqing opened her mouth, not because of the so-called gain that His Honor said, but because His Honor suddenly took out a mobile phone, which made her feel strange. Today's technology is indeed extraordinary, Mr. Song said with a smile. I've already ordered people to present some of the latest models. They are now on the ship. I'll give them to the three of you later. It'll be convenient for you to contact each other. What could she say? Seeing that His Honor was so excited, she could only show a face of ecstasy. This servant thanks His Honor for the reward. Wolfgang just looked at the phone and didn't say anything. How could he be controlled by such a fool? It shouldn't be. Get on the ship. Get off the island. Generally speaking, the administration treated all the transcendent organizations that came to participate in the summit with the principle of treating all of them equally. That was true. However, when it came to sending people to receive them, they couldn't do everything. For example, if a giant like the Magician Association and a non-unionic diplomatic group from Middle-earth arrived at the same time, they couldn't split Yin Xiaoxi into two and make both sides explode. Therefore, the administration treated everyone equally and started for the practical point of view. Fortunately, the administration had already started the plan to increase the number of members. Since the Mount Tai incident, the administration had already increased the number of members. At the same time, this was also the first official and significant mission for these newly recruited people. I've been in the administration for 15 years, but this is the first time I've seen such a big scene. You all are lucky to have encountered this era. No matter what kind of organization it was, there would always be such a person in the organization, senior. By the way, what's your name again? In front of one of the guest houses of the summit, the senior who had just finished his daily inspection suddenly asked. Lung Feng. Lung Feng? The senior repeated the name carefully and then skillfully took out a cigarette. Brother, which department did you come from? Looking at you, ordinary departments can't accommodate a master like you. Senior, you must be joking. Lung Feng shook his head and said, I'm just a newcomer. No matter which department I came from, I'm just a newbie in the administration. You look like a soldier. The senior narrowed his eyes and then smiled. I heard that there was a training program before. A group of elite soldiers were selected from the military all over the country and sent to Consultant Firecloud for intensive training. You came here in the same way, right? Of course not. Lung Feng smiled and said, It's because my sister-in-law is in the bureau. I pulled a lot of strings to get in. If I could go to Consultant Huiyun for training, why would I be doing such a simple job here? I would have been sent to a field mission long ago. That's true. The senior smiled non-committally and said, Okay, there's nothing else here. You can go back and report. Okay. Lung Feng nodded and then drove away. Where's your sister-in-law? The senior flicked the cigarette butt and chuckled. Then he shook his head and went back to the guest house casually. After leaving the guest house, it didn't take long to drive back to the temporary headquarters of the administration. However, Lung Feng didn't go back immediately. Instead, he drove around the city for a while and thought about something. His experiences in the past few months were far better than the first half of his life, since he was selected for the intensive training program. In fact, since the rescue operation of the Mount Tai incident, he had been thrown into that mysterious supernatural world. However, Lung Feng was no longer a young man. He was in his 30s and had a family. In the list of people who were selected for the intensive training program, there was almost no one older than him. Most of them were hot-blooded young men in their early 20s. He was even weaker in terms of physical fitness. However, he endured it and completed the training program early. Before that, he was lucky enough to receive private guidance from Consultant Firecloud. It was said that in the decades of the administration's history, it was one of the rare cases. Was he proud? Obviously not. Lung Feng only felt that there was not enough time. It was not enough for a middle-aged man like him to compete with the younger generation and rush in front of these young people. But since it's rare for me to come back here, I should go and see Xiling and little Luo Qiu. However, Lung Feng quickly gave up this idea. He was still in the midst of official business and couldn't get too involved in personal feelings. As a soldier, Lung Feng restrained his human nature to the maximum extent. He even only called home once a week to report that he was safe and only said a few simple words. Let's go back. He quickly made a decision and carried out this decision without hesitation. It's the same if I visit after everything is over. But soon, Lung Feng had to step on the brake and stop the car. He focused his eyes and looked at a figure in the riverside corridor outside the car. Then he hurriedly unfastened his seat belt, got out of the car, and rushed to the figure in his sight. It was the back of a young woman. He quickly came behind the figure and asked tentatively, "Excuse me, is that Zhong Luoyue, third Miss Zhong in front?" She slowly turned around and looked at the man who called her. She frowned slightly. "You are Lung Feng." Lung Feng said directly, "Third Miss, do you remember me? We've met once." "Your grandpa's." The Zhong family's old master was a person who had survived the war era. He was in the army and had a strong background in the army. However, due to his health problems, he had faded out of the public eye in recent years. Lung Feng's original troop belonged to the exploration team established by Old Master Zhong when he was young. Of course, in the decades after the war, the original exploration team had undergone many reorganizations. "Lung Feng, I remember now." Zhong Luoyue nodded after recovering from her daze. Some of her blurry memories gradually became clearer. "A few years ago, at my grandpa's birthday party, we did meet once. This was probably the benefit of becoming a vampire. Her vision, memory, hearing, smell, and so on were all strengthened to different degrees, especially her memory." Zhong Luoyue found that as long as she concentrated hard to recall something, she could get a clear memory from the blurry memories of the past, no matter how insignificant the details were. "Third Miss, you have a good memory." Lung Feng smiled. Zhong Luoyue said casually, "You're not bad either. We only met briefly a few years ago, but you could still recognize me in the crowd at a glance." "Actually, not exactly." Lung Feng shook his head. "I just paid more attention to your affairs recently." "Me?" Zhong Luoyue frowned. "Why?" Lung Feng said, "Third Miss has been missing for a long time. So Senior Officer Luo found many people in private, hoping to help. I also heard some news, so I paid more attention to it. But I didn't expect to meet Third Miss here today. Third Miss, Senior Officer has been looking for you for a long time. I think I should inform the old chief. I don't want to go back for the time being." Zhong Luoyue shook her head. "And this is my family affair. Thank you for your concern, Major Lung. I'm not in the army now." "Is that so?" Zhong Luoyue nodded. She saw a badge pinned on Lung Feng's collar. This was the symbol of the administration. But she didn't ask. There was no need. She originally planned to walk around alone to relieve her boredom. She didn't expect to meet someone who knew her in such a place. Moreover, it should be someone from the Zhong family's side. Before her grandfather retired, he had indeed supported many people. Most of these people were deeply grateful to her grandfather. This kind of terrifying network that had been accumulated over decades was also an important factor in why the Zhong family was able to become one of the 4 great families in the capital. However, Zhong Luoyue didn't have the heart to care about such worldly affairs. It was mainly because of the nature of vampires. The blood of their loved ones was extremely attractive to vampires, and it was often the culprit that caused vampires to go missing. How could she dare to return to the Zhong family at this time? "Third Miss, if it's convenient, can you give me your contact number?" Lung Feng thought for a while. He saw Zhong Liyue's disappearance as a runaway due to a conflict with her family, so he didn't intend to force her. "Or, you can leave my contact number. If there's anything, feel free to look for me." "That's very kind of you," Zhong Luoyue said perfunctorily in her heart, but there was no trace of perfunctory expression on her face. She even gave a feeling of gratitude. Lung Feng smiled and said, "You're welcome." After all, I know Third Miss since you were young. I kind of watched you grow up. When young, Zhong Luoyue couldn't help but be stunned. Her powerful memory started to move forward and search carefully. Lung Feng had already started speaking. Third Miss, I guess you don't remember much. After all, it was very young. At that time, Third Miss, eldest young master, and second young master were arranged by the old chief to train in the army. It was in the summer. Do you still remember? Zhong Luoyue pondered and didn't say anything. Lung Feng said, at that time, Third Miss was lost. At that time, I was only a small company commander. We were almost scared to death. Fortunately, we found you in the end. I remember, Zhong Luoyue nodded and asked curiously, how did you find me at that time? Lung Feng said, one of my good brother's children told us. That child said that he accidentally got lost at night and then met a little girl in the forest. After a night, when the sun rose, he found his way out and asked for help. When we heard that, we knew it must be you, Third Mississippi. That's why we found Third Miss. Zhong Luoyue suddenly grabbed Lung Feng's arm. Lung Feng could not help but be astonished by this sudden action. She had a complicated expression on her face. You really know that child? Am I finally about to find you? Little rascal. Chapter 1925. That's the child of a good friend of mine. It was summer vacation back then, so he brought the child to visit me. Unknowingly, Zhong Luoyue and Lung Feng found a bench nearby and sat down. Lung Feng was more curious about why the Third Miss was so interested in what happened back then. However, Lung Feng was indebted to the Zhong family, so he was naturally more sensitive to the descendants of the Zhong family. Are you still in touch? She pondered and asked. We haven't been in touch for a while, Lung Feng said casually, then frowned curiously. Third Miss, you seem to care a lot about that child. Zhong Luoyue smiled faintly and said almost impeccably, when I was young, I lost my way in the forest, fell into a tree hole, and hurt my leg. It was that child who saved me and stayed with me for a night so that I wouldn't be too scared. However, when I woke up, you had already found me and sent me directly to the military hospital. I never saw that child again, and I didn't even have a chance to say thank you. Lung Feng listened carefully. Perhaps it was because he was subconsciously suspicious. He needed to make sure that the Third Miss of the Zhong family cared about that child, and whether it would affect the child in any way. He didn't want this child who had grown up to be negatively affected. If necessary, he didn't even want to reveal more about this child to the Third Mississippi. After all, so much time had passed. Even if he said that he couldn't remember clearly, Zhong Luoyue wouldn't have anything to say. However, he saw that Zhong Luoyue seemed to be really grateful, so he was slightly relieved. I see. Lung Feng nodded and smiled. Actually, Third Miss, have you ever thought that the child might have forgotten about this matter? After all, it happened so many years ago. Maybe. Zhong Luoyue chuckled. I also forgot about it for a long time, but I suddenly remembered it recently. So, if it's possible, Mr. Lung, can you tell me how to contact this friend of yours? At least let me say thank you that's been delayed for more than 10 years. I'm afraid that won't work. Lung Feng shook his head. You won't be able to contact my friend. Zhong Luoyue was stunned. He died in the line of duty a few years ago. Lung Feng said softly. However, I can give you their address. As for whether you'll be able to see the child from back then, I can't guarantee it because I heard he went abroad to study. Perhaps he's not here now. It's okay. Zhong Luoyue's eyes lit up. It's better than being surrounded by a sea of people. She soon obtained a piece of paper with an address on it from Lung Feng. After that, there was nothing else worth talking about. Zhong Luoyue and Lung Feng were practically strangers to each other. One of them only wanted to help the old chief find out about his granddaughter's whereabouts, while the other wanted to find out about what happened back then. That was why they had this rare conversation in their lives. After a hurried farewell, Lung Feng drove away. According to the principle of going to the nearest, Lung Feng had just received an order to receive a supernatural envoy that had just arrived. Zhong Luoyue sat alone on a bench in the riverside corridor. She looked at the piece of paper with the address in her hand and fell into deep thought. Should I go? She couldn't help but ask herself. The wind by the river carried a unique, fishy smell, but it wasn't the smell of blood that vampires liked. She was no longer the little girl back then. What the hell is going on here? Another car drove into a small valley not far from the city. Two field agents from the administration got out of the car. They quickly found the car of Senior Agent Fu Mingxian, who went to investigate the place where the drone was shot down in the morning. When they saw the parked off-road vehicle, they naturally saw the two heads pierced through by the tree branches and stuck in the ground. The two field agents were instantly shocked by the scene in front of them. It was a perilous situation. Finally, they found Fu Mingxian's body with his head separated from his body. They could no longer analyze the situation at the scene. This was probably the worst thing that had happened before the Transcendence Conference officially began. A senior agent and two mid-level agents of the administration had been killed. Chopping off the heads and hanging them on the ground with branches was the worst form of provocation. What did you say? She lost her composure. In the surveillance room of one of the guest houses that the administration had temporarily requisitioned, Yin Xiaoxi, who had been watching the surveillance footage for almost a week, suddenly sprung up from her seat. Old Fu is dead. Yes, it's true. These are the photos of the crime scene. The subordinate whipped out his mobile phone and showed it to Yin Xiaoxi. I didn't believe it at first. It was unbelievable, but it's true. Boss Fu died a horrible death. Yin Xiaoxi took the mobile phone and stared at it without uttering a single word. However, her expression was the coldest and most terrifying one that the subordinate had ever seen in years. Chief, get the people at the scene to protect everything at the scene. Yin Xiaoxi said with an expressionless face, don't touch anything. I want to check it out personally. But the murder here, just as the subordinate was about to say something, he saw Yin Xiaoxi's gaze and hurriedly changed his words. Chief, just go ahead. Leave this matter to me. I won't let anything go wrong here. Yin Xiaoxi remained silent and strode out of the surveillance room. The subordinate pressed his hands against the control panel and stared at the surveillance footage on the screen. However, he could no longer focus. Since they addressed him as Boss Fu, he should know how close they were to Fu Mingxian. Murder case, Boss Fu's death. The subordinate muttered to himself, tomorrow is the meeting. Is this directed at us, the agency, or... Yin Xiaoxi soon arrived at the scene of the murder. In fact, after driving out of the restricted area, he immediately stuck a few lightning speed charms on himself and jumped out of the car. He then sped all the way there. Chief. The two agents who were guarding the scene hurriedly rushed forward to greet him. Yin Xiaoxi walked toward Fu Mingxian's corpse without uttering a single word. He squatted down and looked at Fu Mingxian's head that had been cut open. His eyes were still open. Yin Xiaoxi closed his eyes and said, Trust me, I'll definitely find the murderer for you. Yin Xiaoxi then looked at the two field agents and asked, Where's the soul-summoning instrument? I told you to prepare it on the way here. The two field agents seemed to be in a dilemma. They opened their mouths, but could not find the words to say. Where's this soul-summoning instrument? Yin Xiaoxi asked in a low voice. Leader, please listen to us first. One of the field agents gritted his teeth and said, Before you came, we already used the spirit summoner to check Boss Fu and the other two agents' surroundings, but we couldn't detect their 3 souls and 7 spirits at all. Their souls are gone. Disappeared? Yin Xiaoxi frowned and looked around in bewilderment. Disappeared? How could that be? Chief, the field agent said. Boss Fu came here to investigate the destruction of the drone. We found the wreckage of the drone nearby. Could it be that the person who killed Boss Fu and the person who destroyed the drone were the same person who trespassed? Since Yin Xiaoxi did not speak, the two field agents naturally did not dare to continue speaking. Yin Xiaoxi sat cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed and his hands forming a strange hand seal. He sat there without moving at all. Chief, what were you doing? You don't understand. Chief Yin's natural sense of perception is extraordinary. He can sense many things that can't be detected with the naked eye and equipment. I think he's using his spiritual sense to search for any remaining clues. After a long while, Yin Xiaoxi opened his eyes. There seemed to be a flash of lightning in them. What a strong aura. This level seems to be even stronger than Master's. Yin Xiaoxi's expression became more and more solemn. He had tracked down many strong auras. Among the remaining auras, there was even an unusually fierce aura. In fact, there were two of them. The people who left behind these powerful auras were suspected to be the ones who killed Fu Mingxian and the two mid-level agents, especially the two most ferocious auras. Bring their corpses back first. Yin Xiaoxi lifted Fu Mingxian's head and said, "There's nothing else worth investigating here. Let's go." Yes, in the train station, Lung Feng was searching for the transcendent order that had just arrived according to his instructions. At the same time, he was reading some simple information about the transcendent order. The Black Order? A few months ago, Lung Feng was just an ordinary soldier who had never come into contact with anything unnatural. But now, all sorts of extraordinary creatures were appearing one after another, leaving Lung Feng feeling as if there was too much for him to take in. All of this was new and mysterious to him. He was like a sponge, rapidly absorbing all the transcendent knowledge he could get his hands on every day. Soon, an exceptionally eye-catching group entered Lung Feng's line of sight. He did not even have to distinguish them to know that they were the people he was supposed to receive. He quickly walked up to them. This group was made up entirely of women. Other than the young woman in the lead, the rest of the women were all dressed in the same black nun's uniform. That was why they were so eye-catching. That was why he could recognize them at first glance. As for the woman in the lead, she was wearing a tight black leather jacket with a slender windbreaker. "Excuse me, are you Miss Lamia's, the representative of the remnant of the black religious congregation in this meeting?" Lung Feng stood upright and asked. Although we're not a big organization, but the woman in the tight leather jacket tilted her head and said, "Are you the only one, Mr. Commissioner of the Kelowna administration?" "I'm sorry." Lung Feng could only say, "Because there are too many envoys arriving in the last 2 days. Knight, we've tried our best to make sure that each of the envoys is received. Miss Lamia's, please follow me. Your accommodation has been arranged." "Then let's go," the woman in the tight leather jacket said calmly. She seemed to be a difficult person to talk to, but Lung Feng did not mind. He was not the talkative type. The Black Order, an anti-God organization? Interesting, Lung Feng thought to himself. Right, have the envoys from the Vatican arrived? The woman in the tight leather jacket asked suddenly. "They're here." Lung Feng nodded and said, "But we're not in charge of arranging meetings between the envoys. I don't want to meet them either." The woman chuckled. "I heard that the Vatican's envoys have an interesting priest. Is that right?" "I'm not sure," Lung Feng said. "I haven't come into contact with the Vatican's envoys." "Is that so?" The woman in the black leather jacket faintly smiled. She immediately looked around and muttered to herself, "Speaking of which, it's really amazing. This city, it's like being completely trapped in a small place, unable to move. It's really an extremely annoying feeling. I hate this feeling of being trapped." Lung Feng did not know how to respond, so he could only ask, "Miss Lamia's, the envoys from all over the world usually come by air. Why did you choose to come by train?" "Because I'm poor." The woman in the black leather jacket smiled. "Do you see the word poor written on my face?" Even Lung Feng, who was a veteran and did not like to smile, was stunned. This reason was very real. "I'm just kidding." The woman in the black leather jacket, Lamia's, chuckled and said casually, "I just don't like the feeling of being in the sky. This way, please." And so, Lung Feng decided to send the women from the Black Order to the guest house as soon as possible. "You're injured. Don't move. Let me treat you." The boy found a lot of leaves and put them in his mouth to chew. He spat out the leaves he chewed and spread them on the girl's leg. The girl felt dirty and wanted to resist, but for the sake of the boy's cute face. He looked like the bear doll in her room. So cute. "Are you hungry? I have some biscuits here. Let's share them. Don't be afraid. Let me tell you a story. Do you know the morning star, the light in the sky? You should have told me. Look at you. You've wet yourself. I won't look at you, but you need to take off your pants. I'll help you dry them. What a strong smell. Little baddie." She opened her eyes abruptly. Her gem-like eyes suddenly opened on the rearview mirror in the car. This gave the driver, who was peeking at her, a fright Those gem-like eyes were extremely sharp. We're here. Dear customer, due to the powerful aura of the owner of those eyes, the driver could not speak fluently. This was a beautiful woman with an unusually powerful aura. The woman paid the driver and got off the car. She did not say a word. She just looked at the piece of paper in her hand and compared it to the address of the building. This is the place. She looked up and studied the residential building in front of her. It was a very ordinary residential building in a small district. There was nothing special about it. In the end, I still came. She did come, but as long as she didn't reach the exact address. She didn't even press the doorbell to let people know. She didn't really come. Should she go up or not? I didn't know there were times when I couldn't make up my mind. Jean Luoyue chuckled and shook her head. Then, she walked into the lobby of the building, pressed the button, and waited. She waited quietly. She had been waiting for many years. Chapter 1926. An ordinary residential building, ordinary and narrow. An elevator that hadn't even been dismantled and renovated with anti-collision planks. An ordinary building with 2 stairs and 4 households. This was not an ordinary day. First, she observed. She called it planning before acting. Jean Luoyue was an observant person. She did not dare to say that she was meticulous, but her woman's sensitivity and innate intuition probably did not lower her average. The shoe rack in front of the door. Men's shoes, women's shoes, women's shoes, women's shoes, women's shoes. There were many women's shoes, and they were all different sizes for different women. Some were mature, some were youthful, and some were ladylike. She pondered in front of the door. There was not only one woman living in this house, but there were different types of women, and most likely they were young women. Brothers, or sisters, guests, or female companions. Of course, they could be wives. Too young, it's impossible. She remembered that he was younger than her. At that time, he was so small, not even as tall as her. He looked like a forest elf who escaped from home to play at night. She continued to ponder. The third daughter of the Zhong family did not expect that the obstacle was a shoe rack. She had been standing here for more than 3 minutes. At this moment, the door of the house seemed to be opening. Jean Luoyue heard the sound and quickly hid behind the safety door at the back of the stairs to observe. She didn't know why she wanted to dodge. It was a subconscious action, which made her feel guilty. This shouldn't be the case. Then, I'm going to take out the trash. It was a woman's voice, and it was a very pleasant voice. She hid behind the safety door, so she could not look out. She could only use her hearing. However, she still couldn't determine the identity of the woman in the room based on this sentence. Why did she have to worry about this? She frowned. She heard the sound of the elevator opening and closing. The woman who was going to take out the trash should have gone down. Jean Luoyue slowly walked out from behind the safety door. She needed to continue to ponder. But reality did not allow her to continue this meaningless stay. There was a young man standing in front of the door looking at her. His smile gave Jean Luoyue an unparalleled impact. She recognized this young man. He was the mysterious young man who was with Song Ying in the manner of the god of gamblers in South America. "It's you," Jean Luoyue said subconsciously. "Why are you here, you?" "Hello, Miss Jean." He smiled like a boss. Jean Luoyue doesn't know how she got in. This is an ordinary family that can be seen at a glance. Even after she sits down, her mind is still a little muddled. "What do you want to drink? Water? Drinks?" Luochio smiled faintly and said, "As for alcohol, if it's not a festival, it's forbidden here." Jean Luoyue thought for a moment and said, "You seem to know that someone will come looking for you." "Me?" Luochio didn't say anything, but just walked closer. He didn't get too close, but the third daughter of the Zhong family suddenly became nervous. However, she made herself look as calm as usual, and her gaze was calm. Boss Luo reached out his hand and pressed a button. He pressed the landline button, and then a message sounded. Jean Luoyue recognized the voice in the message immediately. It was Lung Feng's voice, and it was obvious that Lung Feng had made the call after meeting him. "Is this Xiling? I'm Lung Feng. Nothing special. Recently, a Miss Zhong may come looking for Luochio. She's the granddaughter of a friend of mine. She shouldn't have any bad intentions. As for the reason, let her say it herself. That's all. So, your name is Luochio. Zhong Luoyue looked at him with a slight smile. I finally know your name. Boss Luo smiled and said, there should be an introduction in Mr. Tu's manner. It's not the same. Zhong Luoyue shook her head. Miss Zhong, why are you looking for me? Luochio looked into her eyes and asked. Zhong Luoyue thought for a while and made a decision that even she felt was rash. She looked into Luochio's eyes and slowly stretched out her left leg. She pressed her palm and slowly slid it to her ankle. Then, she slowly pulled up her loose pants, revealing her calf. Do you remember this scar? Boss Luo glanced sideways. On her calf, there was a scar about half a finger long. The color was very faint, but if one looked carefully, it could still be seen clearly. 13 years ago in the summer, Zhong Luoyue said slowly, there was a little girl who got lost in the forest. A boy who was younger than her saved her and treated her wound. They spent the night in the dark tree hole. Boss Luo didn't say anything. Zhong Luoyue said softly, do you know planet Chiming, the light in the sky? Miss Zhong still remembers. Boss Luo smiled. I will always remember, Zhong Luoyue said, as if she was possessed. However, she quickly pulled down her pants and returned to her normal appearance. Actually, I've been looking for her. My family has also been looking for her. We want to thank that child back then, but we haven't been able to find her. Boss Luo said honestly, actually, many things about the past are already very vague to me. I only have a vague impression of what Miss Zhong said. And I remember now. That night in the tree hole, I did treat your wound and told you the story of planet Chiming. And let me think. It's okay if you can't remember the rest. She said quickly and resolutely. I can't remember for now. Boss Luo smiled. Only then did the third miss of the Zhong family let out a sigh of relief, but the topic seemed to have come to an end all of a sudden. Her sudden appearance at the door was something completely different from what she had planned. It was like a voice or some kind of push that pushed her from a corner of fate to this place. She didn't expect this at all. There was even a faint feeling of intoxication, as if she had once been in this man's arms. Her chaotic thoughts made Zhong Luoqian look very bad. She even had a feeling of restlessness. Miss Zhong, have you thought about removing the scar on your leg? Boss Luo suddenly said, with the current medical technology, it should be easy to do. She looked at him and asked seriously, you want me to get rid of this scar? It represents something about my past. Boss Luo also answered seriously, from my point of view, I don't want to. But I won't force it because the body belongs to you. And even if the scar is removed, the memory won't be removed. We probably only wish for our memories to have a physical carrier that can bear them so that we can remind ourselves. Do you know what it means to leave a scar on a woman? That's why I said I won't force it. Boss Luo smiled. Whether it's tangible or intangible, Ms. Zhong appeared today. If there are no special circumstances, I think it will be hard for me to forget this matter in the future, because it had been extracted from my blurry memories of the past. An adult's memory is probably a lifetime's memory. What about the childhood memory? What does it look like? She was still looking at his eyes, just like the past, or the past. The eyes of the little boy in her memory were as bright and clear as the past. Just like what you and I look like now. What do you look like? She asked aggressively. Miraculously, this was a reunion after 13 years. Many things could have happened in 13 years, and even one's nature could have changed. It should have been a reunion full of unfamiliarity. But Zhong Luoyue unexpectedly felt as if she had met a playmate who grew up with her. She had unknowingly revealed some of her inner thoughts without realizing it, and she didn't even hate it. Before coming here, she never thought that it would be like this. Boss Luo didn't answer, but asked, Miss Zhong, am I the person in your memory? You know how to avoid the question. Zhong Luozu chuckled, cunning, good at shifting the question back to the questioner. The answer? Boss Luo said casually, the answer we know, the answer we hope to get, and the answer we imagined before asking the question may not be ideal. Boss Luo immediately smiled. Miss Zhong has a good impression of me, right? Because of what happened when we were young. Maybe it's not necessarily a good impression, but just a special emotion. Zhong Luoyue opened her mouth, and her eyes gradually lost focus at this moment. She subconsciously said, "You are not only cunning, but also very unexpected. You're so direct." She shook her head and said with a bitter smile, "I admit, I was a little caught off guard by this move of yours. It's not hard to guess." Boss Luo smiled. "If it can only be forgotten, then Miss Zhong naturally wouldn't come to find me after 13 years. Of course, maybe it's because you didn't have time to say thank you to me back then, so it formed this special feeling. If Miss Zhong's family had thanked me back then, I think I have completely forgotten this matter long ago, right?" She chuckled and said frankly, "It's true. What's missing, regretful, and lost, etc. They can always last longer than expected." "I'm not what you imagined," Boss Luo said softly. "You're not what I imagined." Zhong Luoyue also smiled as if relieved. "It seems that I didn't come in vain today. Anyway, the thank you that was late for 13 years is finally delivered." "Thank you, Luochio." "You're welcome." The servant girl seemed to have come back at the right time, but when she came back, she was carrying a small bag in her hand. She seemed to have bought something. "Guest, it seems that you have been gone for a long time." "Yes." Boss Luo smiled. "It's been a while." Boss Luo pressed the pause button of the TV and asked casually, "Didn't you say that there were a lot of leftover ingredients from yesterday?" Miss Maid smiled. "If it's just some, it probably can't satisfy Miss Lizzie's appetite, so I added some beef." "Master, can we have beef hot pot tonight?" The most perfunctory words were whatever. "I like the sauce you made for the hot pot." So Boss Luo smiled. "It has magic, and it can make all ordinary tastes pleasant. Do you need my help? I don't think I should keep a lady busy all the time. Let me be your assistant, madam. I'll be very strict." "I'm not bad either." Boss Luo smiled. "If it's only about knife skills, I'm quite confident." The shop owner and the maid quickly got busy in the small kitchen. Boss Luo, who was cutting vegetables, suddenly asked, "By the way, do you remember what happened when you were a child? For example, when?" Miss Maid thought for a while. "For example." Boss Luo thought for a while. "For example, when I was a child and got lost in the forest." Miss Maid said, "There are too many unified individuals, and there are many similar memories. Well, now it seems that I was a very naughty child when I was a child." Boss Luo put down the kitchen knife, held Miss Maid's hand, and brought her into his arms. He ran his hand through her hair and caressed her cheek. "Do you know what I want to do now?" They looked at each other. They hugged and kissed each other. "Well, don't worry, I'm fine. I'll be back soon, don't worry." It was a call from Elizabeth. The vampire girl was quite anxious because of Zhong Liyue's long absence. In this strange foreign country where all supernatural powers were forbidden. "I seem to be very happy." Zhong Liyue was stunned for a moment before he shook his head. "No, I didn't come across anything worth being happy about. I just bumped into a friend of mine and chatted for a while. All right, the car's here. I should be able to return to the hotel in an hour." Then the call ended. Zhong Luoyue sighed. As a vampire, Elizabeth was actually a substitute for Zhong Luoyue, but the truth seemed to be the other way around. She also regarded Elizabeth as her own sister. Only by treating Elizabeth with sincerity could she get Elizabeth's dependence. To invest in feelings, she must first be willing to sacrifice herself. She might be despicable. She also thought so. "Is that you, the one with the tail, number XXXX? Let's go." Zhong Luoyue got on the car, leaning against the window, and said casually, "Please drive slowly. I'll give you a tip. You can drive as slow as you want." The driver was quite happy, and from time to time, he looked through the rearview mirror to size up this extraordinarily beautiful woman. Zhong Luoyue didn't care about the driver's gaze. She was thinking about something. Today's matter. The matter of the little boy who had grown up. Some people are shallow. Tomato. Some people are golden on the outside, but rotten on the inside. Inadvertently, one day, you will meet a person as gorgeous as a rainbow. From then on, other people are just like fleeting clouds. An adult will remember for a lifetime. Zhong Luoyue murmured, "I can't forget. I actually forgot to ask for their contact information. Do you know Venus, the light in the sky? ########PS1. I didn't add any previews because I was planning to sleep, but a ruthless capitalist decided to temporarily hang me up. Writing equals PS2. Thank people under the parasol tree for being cute equals PS3 1/1. Chapter 1927. We want to see Lord Long. It was the last day before the summit meeting. We won't give up until we see Lord Long. Today, they must persuade Lord Long. At least, they should get some support so that the proposal they had prepared for a long time could be passed. See, this is a Peachwood sword passed down from the Warring States period. I want to die. Don't stop me. At this time. Everyone, it's noon. Let's eat something. The little butterfly monster of the pet hospital walked out with a big wooden plate hanging on her body, the kind that could be hung on the neck with a bag and could hold a lot of things. I said, I want to die. See my Peachwood sword of more than 2,000 years. This is yours. Eat it while it's hot. Oh, thank you. I'll die later. Don't stop me. She didn't know how to stop them. After delivering food to the elders and young people of the Monster Clan Association, the little butterfly monster went back immediately without any hesitation. It's really not easy for these old grandpas. Luo Dance thought, but she still did what she should do. There was no place to deliver medicine today, and the hospital couldn't open in this state. As for the cleaning, it had been done in the morning. She could have studied and prepared for the exam, but because of the transcendence, many things were put on hold. Even the public school had been suspended, needless to say, the adult exam she had signed up for. The little butterfly monster who was eager to learn also had no intention to study. Then, how about taking Mr. Fafna for a walk? Few people knew that in the hospital of Long Shinryu, Kelowna, there was a golden dragon that had made a big trouble in the inhuman domain. The last golden dragon in the inhuman domain had made a big trouble. Even if it was an endangered animal, the Magician Association couldn't protect it. The head of the Radiance Tower thought of a compromise. That was to let the golden dragon go outside to avoid the trouble. But even so, the golden dragon couldn't be left alone. It needed a strong supervisor. Therefore, the true dragon of Godly Land, who loved Face and was also the initiator of Fafner's troubles, took over this golden Fafner, who had reproductive difficulties and generously gave up the small garden behind the pet hospital for it to live in. The golden dragon looked like a yellow dog now, living in a very simple, ugly, wooden house built by Longshaw. Mr. Fafna, time to eat. The little butterfly monster put a plate of meat in front of the door of the wooden house, squatting, hugging her knees, and looking inside. In the simple, ugly wooden hut, the last golden dragon was lying in the innermost corner. After seeing the appearance of the little butterfly monster, it disdainfully shook its head and ignored her. Mr. Fafna, aren't you hungry? I got a lot of fresh meat. Fafna's ears moved slightly, but its body remained motionless. The little butterfly monster persisted. Mr. Fafna, after eating, I'll take you out for a walk. Don't stay here all day. It's not good for your health. Damn it, this butterfly spirit, is it really treating me as a pet dog that needs to be walked? I'm a last golden dragon. How can I? But if I don't go out, if it didn't go out now, I would have to deal with some physiological problems in the small wooden house, sleeping next to its own excrement. Just thinking about it made it uncomfortable. Wow, Mr. Fafna, you're out. Good boy, eat something. The little butterfly monster happily stroked the golden dragon's head, causing Fafner to roll his eyes. But probably because he was really hungry, in just a few moments, Fafner had already finished all the food on the plate, and even added another plate. Take me out. I can't hold it anymore. Soon, Luo Dance led the golden dragon out of the underground training ground of the pet hospital. I'm going to die in the name of honor. Do you see this over 2,000 years old peach wood sword? It was a weak shout. At this time, the group of Demon Clan elders were like plants lacking water under the scorching sun. All of them looked listless. And at this time, a group of people had come to this place unknowingly. A man in a wrinkled white casual suit, a foreign woman with a good figure, a fat foreign woman, and a foreign youth in black clothes. There was also a short uncle with shifty eyes, the pangolin spirit that was caught in the small valley. There was something magical about the Forbidden City, the transformation of the monster race. They couldn't transform in the city, but their transformed bodies wouldn't be released by the Forbidden City. For example, if they had turned into a human before entering the city, they wouldn't be released in the city, but they couldn't change back to their original bodies. Similarly, if they entered the city with their original bodies, they could only stay in their original bodies. Before entering the city, the pangolin spirit had turned into a human and suggested that the black dragon should also transform if it could. This black dragon was the partner of Sword Saint Roland, the legendary hero in the inhuman domain. The black dragon had followed Sword Saint Roland to participate in the most vicious and tragic war in the European continent 100 years ago, and had survived until now. Ordinary people couldn't understand the black dragon's arrogance. Forbidden City? Wouldn't it be better to enter the city with its original body and maintain its original appearance? Humph! With the dragon's strong body, even if it didn't use its magic power, it could still trample ordinary people to death. Then, the iron-headed black dragon simply barged into the zone where extraordinary powers were forbidden. The moment it stepped into the zone, the black dragon promptly knelt. Not only could it not use its huge magic power, but it also couldn't use its physical strength. The feeling of weakness even made the black dragon kneel down instantly. Its four limbs couldn't even support its huge and heavy body, and its blood vessels burst in an instant. In shock, Ajuin had to crawl out, barely keeping its life. Its heart couldn't even bear the burden of the forbidden space, and its heavy internal organs were about to burst its heart. The black dragon that barely escaped death instantly turned into a human. Along the way, it no longer dared to underestimate this strange forbidden space. Not only the black dragon Ajuin, but the chubby girl and granddaughter of the Sword Saint, Leah, also looked pale because of the forbidden power. Needless to say, the soul, which had an unnatural expression on her face. This soul, which was born special and had a powerful spiritual talent. She could always read the thoughts of others, which made it impossible for others to lie in front of her. She could see through all secrets and hear all thoughts. But now, she couldn't hear anything. She couldn't even know if the people walking towards her had any ill intentions. This uneasy feeling even made her temporarily give up on the idea of leaving Farrell's side. According to the pangolin spirit, now, in the city, one could meet one or two demons or transcendents just by going out. Only Farrell seemed to be completely unaffected. Even in this forbidden city, the soul, which didn't see any hesitation on Farrell's face. Old man, aren't you affected? Why don't you look worried at all? I can't use my power either. Then why are you? We humans are born weak. We are weak, and so are others. What's there to be afraid of? The soul, which immediately gave up arguing with this crazy old man. Then, under the lead of the pangolin spirit, the team smoothly arrived at their destination, the hospital of the Shinryu in Kelowna. They also saw the group of elders and energetic youths of the demon race gathered outside the hospital to petition. Where did these guys come from? Farrell frowned and asked. Without the power of the soul, it was extremely difficult for the soul which to communicate with the pangolin spirit. She couldn't effectively communicate with the pangolin spirit, even if she used both her hands and mouth. They seemed to be the elders of the Demon Alliance in Kelowna. They gathered here to ask the Shinryu of the East for help. At this moment, a timid voice was heard. It was the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, whose face seemed to have words like, "Don't look at me," and "I'm too fat. I don't look good," written all over her face. You can understand the language of this spirit? The soul which couldn't help but be surprised. No, you can understand the complicated words of Kelowna? The granddaughter of the Sword Saint lowered her head even more, and her voice was like a mosquito's buzzing. I like to see some of the things here on the internet are very good. So I'll learn their language all the time. The soul which rolled her eyes and said impatiently, "When we were in the valley, why didn't you say it was a waste of my spiritual power?" Leia hurriedly said, "I saw that Miss Julienne was already communicating with him. Sorry. Forget it. The soul which waved her hand. Seeing that Ajuin looked like he would beat her up if she bullied Leia again, she had no choice but to say, "Since we have reached our goal, then what do you plan to do, old man?" Leia asked this spirit. Farrell thought for a while and said, "How big is the Demon Alliance in Kelowna?" "Ah, oh, I know. Old man, what are you trying to do?" The soul witch, who was really scared of Farrell's brain circuit, trembled like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. But Farrell didn't respond. He just looked across the street at the group of demons in front of the pet hospital. Leia was currently communicating with the pangolin spirit. At the same time, a girl was walking over with a dirt yellow dog. 1 minute ago. This feeling. Yes, it's this feeling, this kind of thrill that went straight to the soul. The comfortable feeling of expansion and fading away, and a numbness in the brain. "Mr. Fafner, you can't do it under the electric pole," the little butterfly monster scolded. "There's a pet bathroom over there." Umph. The golden dragon didn't care about that at all. He only cared about himself. A pet bathroom? Did they really think that the golden dragon was a domesticated pet dog? "Hey, those people are—" The little butterfly monster looked to the side, then blinked and pulled Fafner over there. "Wait, butterfly monster, I'm not done yet." "Wait, what's this smell? How come? Don't go over there. Butterfly monster, don't." Luo Dance held the golden dragon's 4 limbs and scratched the floor. Soon, she came to the front of a group of guys who were sneakily hiding in the corner. "Uncle Pangolin, why are you here? Are you not feeling well and came to see a doctor?" The little butterfly monster patted on the pangolin's shoulder. This gave the pangolin's spirit a fright. It quickly turned around and asked, "Who are you, little girl? I don't know you. Go, go." Luo Dance blinked and looked at the pangolin. She also noticed some foreigners. "Uncle Pangolin, what's wrong with you? Are they your friends?" "I said I don't know you. Go." The pangolin was furious. He even stretched out his hands and pressed Luo Dance's shoulders, turning her around and pushing her. "Where did you come from, little girl? Go home. Don't get in the way. Go." "Huh?" At this time, Farrell's palm directly grasped the pangolin's wrist. Obviously, the pangolin didn't dare to look into this guy's eyes even though they couldn't use their strength. "I don't know this girl, really." Farrell was expressionless, but he didn't loosen his grip on the pangolin. "Leia, ask it who this girl is." But at this time, Ajuin's voice suddenly sounded like a scream. "Fafner, I smell Fafner." Farrell's eyes instantly focused. At the same time, the pastoral dog led by the little butterfly monster was standing on tiptoe, trying to escape bit by bit, but couldn't get out of the leash and was soon strangled. "Ah, Mr. Fafner, don't run around. Otherwise, Sister Long will scold me." The little butterfly monster stretched out her hand and pulled the struggling pastoral dog back. Fafner grasped the floor with a frightened look. How could this be? Why did Ajuin appear here? It's over. It's over. It's really over this time. The golden dragon's reputation is going to be ruined. It's really you, Fafner. The black-clothed youth had already bypassed the little butterfly monster and came to the pastoral dog's side. He lowered his head and said in amazement, "I smelled it from afar and was wondering. I didn't expect it to be you. How did you become this?" "Puaha." The black-clothed youth Ajuin was surprised at first, but as he spoke, he suddenly laughed crazily. "Fafner." The last golden dragon's eyes were lifeless, like an empty shell that had been played with. It lifted the leash and wrapped it around its neck twice, then pulled hard. "Fafner, it's dead." Fafner stuck out its tongue and fell to the ground like mud. After twitching a few times, it stopped moving. "Hey, Mr. Fafner, you can talk. That's amazing, I didn't know. Damn you." Chapter 1928. Picking up the motionless dog on the ground, Ajuin looked at it closely. "Fafner, don't play dead." The yellow pastoral dog was still motionless. "So, you know Mr. Fafner. Nice to meet you." The little butterfly monster communicated with them in a fluent foreign language. Leia, who was puzzled about how to communicate with strangers, suddenly felt relieved. Communicating with one stranger in one day was the limit. When she asked about the pangolin spirit, her spirit was drained. The pangolin spirit suddenly realized that something was wrong. Taking advantage of the time when Farrell's attention was temporarily diverted to Luo dance, it suddenly threw out its hands. From the pangolin spirit's hands, a thick white powder was instantly scattered. Everyone immediately waved their arms instinctively to slap the white powder away. "What's this?" It was the voice of the Mind Witch. "They are gone. That woman, the pangolin, and Fafnir." It was the voice of the black-clothed youth. "Water, give me water, let me wash." The Mind Witch fetched a bottle of mineral water and was about to wash her eyes. Unexpectedly, Leia was startled and said in horror, Don't use water. Don't. Your eyes will go blind." "What?" The witch was so scared that she immediately stopped. "This should be the legendary lime powder," Leia said in a panic. "I've read a lot of Chinese books. It's mentioned that if the eyes are touched by lime powder, you should never wash your eyes with water. Sprinkling lime powder seems to be a trick that the masters here like to use. It's one of the necessary equipment for masters to go out. It's especially effective in escaping." "It's just ordinary flour," Farrell said suddenly. "Ah." The granddaughter of the sword sage was dumbfounded. "But in those fried chicken fantasy novels, wasn't it written like this?" After washing, the Mind Witch said indignantly, "This abominable monster actually used such a despicable trick." Farrell said with appreciation, "This is a tactic that is very effective in disturbing the enemy. Although it's against the way of knights, if we used this tactic well in the war, we might have been able to reduce some casualties. I'm looking forward to the masters of Kelowna." "Are you serious?" The witch blinked her eyes. "However," Farlier said, "this is a country that I have never set foot in. Perhaps I can find a way to fight against those demons here. Before meeting Kelowna and Shinryu, I want to test the strength of these monsters and see what's different." Without giving the witch any time to react, Farrell headed straight for the petitioning party of the demons in front of the hospital. "I don't want to go crazy with this old man." Miss Witch clenched her teeth and looked at Leia and Ajuin. "Both of you, I know you are also unwilling to be captured by Farrell. Now that we're here, Farrell can't use his power. We can completely escape from him." Ajuin subconsciously glanced at Leia, as if he was already tempted. "Let's disperse," Miss Witch said decisively. She was about to run away. "If you want to stay with him, I don't mind. But I know there's no benefit to it. I'm sorry, I'm not going with you." Lifting her skirt, Miss Witch ran away without looking back. Ajuin shuddered and grabbed Leia's arm. "She's right. There's no reason for us to keep following this lunatic Farrell. His madness will only bring us eternal damnation. Leia, let's leave first and then go back to the inhuman domain. We'll find a place to hide. I don't believe he can find us this time. But, why don't we tell Mr. Farrell before we leave?" Without a second thought, Ajuin lifted the plump Leia up, found a random path, and ran. At this moment, Farrell did not even turn his head as he walked straight in front of the demon race. "Who are you?" A demon in his 40s holding a peach with sword frowned. "Those who are petitioning, step aside. I'm the one who took this spot. Don't block me from dying to prove my sincerity. Otherwise, I'll chop you up." As he spoke, he raised his peach with sword high and looked like he was going to chop down. Farrell reached out and grabbed the blade of the peach with sword tightly. "This kind of wooden sword can't kill. Why are you using a wooden sword? Let go. I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm warning you, if you don't let go, don't blame me for not being polite. This guy has a lot of strength. Although this little bit of strength is nothing if not for the forbidden spell. But to be able to perform this way in the forbidden spell environment, could this guy be the naturally strong type? I'm Farrell. Please enlighten me." Since their language was different, this mad knight returned to the most primitive way of making friends. Fight. Fight. I can reach your heart, and you can also leave a mark on my body. We can understand each other. The heavier the fist, the deeper the understanding. There was no better way to understand a person than to fight. Fist. Although the person holding the peachwood sword didn't know what the skinny man in a wrinkled white suit was saying, he didn't need to guess when he saw the other party's fist. This was clearly a signal to start a fight. "Good guy, you probably don't know how I became famous. Back then, I was on the shore of Bossy. My left fist. Ouch! The fist was too fast. Before the middle-aged man with the peach-wood sword finished speaking, his left eye was hit. Do you have any manners? I haven't even said. Ouch! You've angered me. I'm a peach tree with 300 years of cultivation. Ouch! Uppercut, uppercut, roundhouse kick. The moment the middle-aged man with the peach-wood sword was sent flying, the peach-wood sword in his hand was instantly snatched away by Farrell. This kick sent the peach tree spirit flying more than 2 meters away. He directly smashed in front of a group of sitting demon elders. The peach tree spirit wasn't seriously injured. After all, his physical quality was there. It was just that his face wasn't good. At this time, Farrell was holding the peach-wood sword in his hand. He looked around at the demons and frowned. I want to experience the battle tactics of the East. Don't have any scruples. Let your strongest guy come out. Confrontation. At this time, a few energetic demons quickly helped the peach tree spirit up. They gritted their teeth and looked like they wanted to try. They didn't understand what bird language the other party was speaking, but it didn't matter. They just had to fight. This was the world's uniform. Elder Foam, this person is strange. The peach tree spirit covered his chest, and his expression changed. I suspect that this guy was called by Lord Long June. What do you mean? For many days, Lord Long June still avoided meeting us. Now that the meeting is about to start, Lord Long June is bound to come out. I think this guy was called by Lord Long June to deliberately provoke and cause trouble. His purpose is to let us know the difficulties and retreat. Otherwise, who would dare to cause trouble when they knew that we were here? You see, even the administration can't do anything to us. In the end, they still sealed this road to prevent humans from breaking in. How can it be someone so stubborn? Elder Foam, you are all seniors of our demon realm. You are of virtue and prestige. If this person doesn't have the support of Lord Long June, I'm sure he won't dare to do this. You are right. At this time, an elder sighed. It seems that Lord Long June really doesn't want to meet us. That's why he deliberately sent this guy. What should we do? Elder Foam, seniors. The peach tree spirit said seriously. The only thing we could do now is to shed all pretense of cordiality. Why don't we all rush up and knock this guy down and directly rush into the hospital? As the saying goes, the law can't punish the masses. We are here for the future of the demon race. We are already prepared to sacrifice ourselves for a righteous cause. Now is the time for the demon race to rise. For the great cause of the demon race, we might as well remonstrate with our lives. Remonstrate with our lives? That's right, remonstrate with our lives. If we don't succeed, we will die for a righteous cause. The peach tree spirit gritted his teeth. For the demon race, we will lay down our heads and shed our blood. I don't believe that Lord Long June will remain indifferent when we show our sincerity with our lives. Well said. Elder Foam knocked his walking stick at this time. The demon race should have such ambition. But, the peach tree spirit was stunned. This is a big matter. Elder Foam said seriously. Let me go back and settle the matters after my death. After I settle the old and young in my clan and find a good place to be buried, I will definitely come to accompany you. Don't worry. The road to the netherworld is one step ahead of you. My thoughts will go with you. Good brother, don't be in a hurry to drink Meng Po's soup on the bridge of helplessness. Wait for me 300 to 500 years. I will definitely accompany you. Elder Foam? At this time, Elder Foam picked up his walking stick and put on his hat. He sped up and left. The peach tree spirit subconsciously looked at another elder of the demon race next to him. Uncle Shui, I also have to settle the matters after my death. Wait for me. I will come back immediately after I make my will. There is no need for 300 to 500 years. 1 to 200 years should be enough. Remember, don't drink Meng Po's soup first. We will still be good brothers in the next life. He walked briskly and sped up. I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do. My stomach hurts. My mother is calling me. The group of elders of the demon race scattered in front of the peach tree spirit one by one. The peach tree spirit could only look at the group of energetic young men of the demon race. But this was like a signal. The energetic young men of the demon race didn't say a word at this time. They directly scattered in a hubbub. Only the peach tree spirit was left. He looked at the originally majestic petition team, but now he was the only one left. He immediately shuddered. Die. Lighter than a goose feather. The peach tree spirit raised his head and looked at a window on the upper floor of the pet hospital. He was impassioned. With tears in his eyes, he walked step by step towards Farrell. He directly tore open the clothes on his chest and said sadly, "Heavier than Mount Tai. Come on, Lord Dragon King, look at my loyal heart. Come on, kill me. Come on." Farrell looked at the approaching guy expressionlessly. When this group of people of the Demon Race Alliance scattered in a hubbub, he didn't even intend to stop them. This group of people gave him the feeling that they were a mob. This was the Demon Race Alliance, one of the two major forces in Kelowna. Come on, kill me. He didn't understand. But Farrell didn't like men exposing their breasts in front of him, so he didn't even think about it. Although this was a space where magic was forbidden, most of Farrell's strength came from his own training. Even if he couldn't use the strength of the Knights of the Round Table, at least his physical fitness was the highest limit that a human could reach before reaching transcendence. If he used the correct method of exerting force with this punch, even an iron plate would be dented. KO. Looking at the peach tree spirit that fainted, Farrell shook his head, picked up the peach tree spirit, and threw it into the bushes on the side of the road. He weighed the peachwood sword in his hand and found that the quality of the sword wasn't bad. It was quite comfortable to hold, so he just kept it. At this time, the psychic witch and the others had gone for a long time. Farrell didn't plan to look for them and directly walked to the door of the pet hospital. He knocked on the door. "Farrell, I hope to meet with the Shinryu of the East." He called in a deep voice. "Is the Eastern Shinryu in? Please open the door." Bang, 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 bang. "Who are you looking for?" After a while, a woman's voice came from behind Farrell. The Mad Knight frowned. Although all strength was reduced to the freezing point in the forbidden space, he was still very surprised that someone could come this close. He saw a tall Oriental woman wearing jeans and a white shirt. Her hair looked like it hadn't been washed for more than a week. She was standing behind him with one hand on her waist, looking at him from the side. "Are you one of the people here? I'm looking for the Shinryu of the East." The woman listened in confusion, then blinked. Suddenly, she seemed to remember something. She took out her mobile phone, said a few words to it, and turned on the speaker. Farrell had already heard the translated voice. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" They began to communicate through the translation function of the mobile phone. Farrell explained his purpose without hesitation. After the woman understood, she thought for a while. "Why are you looking for the Shinryu of the East?" "She doesn't meet everyone. She's very busy. She has a lot of national affairs to deal with, and a whole army is waiting for her to command." "That's right. She's indeed the guardian of the mysterious East." Farrell said seriously, "I know this is abrupt, but I do have an important matter. I hope to meet with the Kelowna Shinryu. I want to discuss with the Kelowna Shinryu how to deal with a group of terrible demons. For our world." "Is he an idiot?" The woman thought and then nodded. "Okay, but you've come at a bad time. The Kelowna Shinryu is not here. You won't be able to meet him today." "Excuse me, where can I find a Kelowna Shinryu?" Farrell asked sincerely. "Why should I tell you?" The woman shook her head. "If you're going to harm the Shinryu, please believe me." Farrell looked at her sincerely, his eyes clear and without a trace of impurity. The woman was a little surprised and nodded. "Okay, I can tell you, but don't say it's me. I'm friends with the Shinryu. He's not here today, so he asked me to look at the house." "Thank you very much. This is the address." "Forget it. I'll write it down for you." A moment later, the woman opened the photo album on her phone and enlarged a picture. She placed it in front of Farrell. "This is the Kelowna Shinryu. Look carefully, don't get the wrong person." In the picture, there was a man in white training clothes with white hair, standing on top of a mountain with his hands clasped behind his back. Even though it was just a picture or a screen, it was enough to topple mountains and overturn seas. The moment Farrell saw the picture, his expression became extremely solemn. "This person is very powerful. Pharaoh was startled. He had already memorized the appearance of the person in the picture. He looked deeply at the woman in front of him and said indifferently, "Thank you. Even if he's not the Shinryu, he looks like the person I'm looking for. I'll come again." Huh? However, she saw this strange man in a white suit leave excitedly like this. The woman scratched her head in confusion and muttered to herself, "Speaking of which, when did the petitioners outside disperse?" Shaking her head, the woman took out the key and opened the door. "Turn on the machine." Outside the city, Grand Peace Hotel. At this time, a young man walked quickly through one corridor after another and finally came to a meeting room. In the meeting room, there were several people with terrifying auras sitting. They were the truly terrifying existences in the Demon Alliance. They were the leaders of the four spirit races: Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, and Vermilion Bird. The leaders of the four spirit races and some leaders of the big races who had arrived early didn't follow the request of the administration to stay in the city. Instead, they directly stayed in the Grand Peace Hotel. There were two major powers in Kelowna: the Dao Sect Association and the Demon Clan Association. The Dao Sect was close to the administration, while the Demon Clan Association had always had conflicts with the administration. "I received news that Elder Fang's group has left. The reason is unknown." The young man hurriedly lowered his head and said, "It's fine if they left. I didn't expect them to succeed." In the darkness, a rough voice said indifferently, "This group of old fellows who are about to be buried in the ground have no power and no subordinates. Usually, they just rely on their seniority and always jump out to make irresponsible remarks. It's good for them to suffer a little loss. If it wasn't for the fact that they are from the same race, I would have torn them apart. Okay, we already know about this matter. You can leave now." Another clear voice suddenly ordered. The young man could only leave. He had many thoughts and glanced around. He found that other than the three leaders of the four spirit races and the one who temporarily took over all the affairs of the White Tiger race after Huang Baifu's disappearance, there was also a person in a black cloak. His appearance couldn't be seen. He didn't know who it was. He only vaguely heard that the leaders of the four spirit races seemed to call this mysterious person Lord Gongsun. Gongsun? Chapter 1929. In the innermost meeting room of the Grand Peace Hotel, the patriarchs and acting patriarchs of the four divine beast clans all looked at the black-robed man, Lord Gongsun. Lord Gongsun had a great background. In terms of status, he was even higher than the patriarchs of the four divine beast clans. As for his strength, it was said that this lord was the strongest and most outstanding genius of the Gongsun clan in the past 1,000 years. He even had a trace of a Yellow Emperor's ancestral bloodline. He was a peerless genius who could use a trace of the Xian Yuan sword energy. It was difficult for outsiders to know what was going on inside the Xian Yuan palace. They didn't know that the genius of the Gongsun clan in front of them had already been dealt with internally. Gongsun Shiyu. Because of Gongsun Shiyu's collusion with Lai Kai-sheng in the Mount Tai incident, the Xian Yuan Palace had already sent the current patriarch of the Gongsun clan to the Cold Pond to be punished. As for the culprit, Chichi Kamaya, the leader of the Kuan clan, had witnessed his death on Mount Tai, so there was no way to pursue the matter. However, no one in the Xian Yuan Palace knew that Gongsun Shiyu, who had died in the spiritual chief fissure on Mount Tai, was only a clone created by the real Gongsun Shiyu through genetic technology to cultivate the Yellow Emperor's bloodline. Gongsun Shiyu's true identity was the sun seed of the Michael Club, a mysterious and low-key organization that lurked in the dark corners of the world. In this trip, you need to prevent the summit meeting from being held smoothly. The black-robed man said slowly, "This is the human race's way of appeasing the transcendent realm. Once you compromise at the meeting, you will be under the human race's management in the future. However, the human race's fear of the demon race won't decrease because of this. On the contrary, for all the demon tribes in the divine land that have been exposed under the sun, I believe that you, as the four spiritual tribes, know very well what kind of situation it will be." The acting patriarchs of the Azure Dragon, Vermilion Bird, and White Tiger remained silent. The patriarch of the Azure Dragon clan snorted coldly. The administration has long had thoughts of annihilating us. In the past 10 years, their management of us demon clans has become increasingly strict, even harsh. In the Mount Tai incident, the father of the Azure Dragon clan's patriarch Song Jinshui, the previous patriarch of the Azure Dragon clan, was killed by the fire cloud evil god of the agency on the spot because he secretly helped Lai Kai-shing. This patriarch of the Azure Dragon clan with a strong temperament hated the fire cloud evil god and the agency to an unprecedented degree. I won't let anyone from the Bureau off. Song Jinshui's ice-cold voice echoed. Lord Gongsun, for this extraordinary summit, even if you didn't say anything, I would definitely not let the Bureau's plan succeed. Those bastards from the agency really think that the four spirit clans are easy to deal with. If it wasn't for the fact that Shinryu has been suppressing us demons, it's hard to say which side this world belongs to. In a short period of time, the strength of a large number of our clansmen has greatly increased. Song Jinshui, you said that if it wasn't for the suppression of Shinryu, Chu Xinghe of the Vermilion Bird clan said indifferently, you better be careful with your words. That is Shinryu. She may not know who is speaking ill of her behind her back, but the earth will know. Song Jinshui subconsciously looked at the floor and immediately snorted. If she is really so powerful, she wouldn't be helpless in this forbidden city. Inside, she's just a slightly stronger ordinary person. Aren't we the same? Chu Xinghe shook his head, but the Bureau's weapons can still be used inside. We can't stop them at all. After leaving the city, even if the strength of the four spirit clans has greatly increased after the Spirit Chi revival, we still can't defeat Shinryu. In the end, nothing has changed. Chu Xinghe, are you afraid? Song Jinshui said angrily. Don't forget, your master, the previous Vermilion Bird High Priest, was also mercilessly killed by the fire cloud evil god on Mount Tai. And you, Old Ming, you're the same. Can you really let go of such a deep blood feud? The old and strong black tortoise Ming Tushan said weakly, calm down, okay? Didn't we sit here to solve this matter? Do you think you can solve the problem by just roaring here? Speak. What solution? Song Jinshui snorted coldly. You'll have to ask Lord Gongsun about this. Ming Tushan said calmly. Otherwise, Lord Gongsun wouldn't take the risk to gather the four spirit clans. I think he already has a plan in mind. They looked at the black-robed Gongsun Shiyu who was sitting quietly in the shadows again. Gongsun Shiyu directly threw out an item, a metal ball the size of a human fist. As the metal ball rolled, it cracked open and there was a container inside. It was filled with some purple-blue liquid. I need you to help me bring this item to the summit meeting. At this time, Gongsun Shiyu interlaced his fingers and said indifferently, it is enough to push this summit to a point of no return. What is this? The clan leaders were shocked. It's a newly developed poison. Gongsun Shiyu said calmly, its power is enough to completely erode a transcendent's body in a short time. His organs, bones, and muscles will all be turned into a pool of pus. Lord Gongsun, as if they were shocked by Gongsun Shiyu's description, the clan leaders looked at this prodigy of the Xianyuan Palace in shock. What you all hope for is to restore the prosperity of the demon clan. Gongsun Shiyu said calmly, there has never been a method to overthrow a ruler without bloodshed. Or rather, what you all said about leading the demon clan to find a new way out is just like that group of old people who are petitioning in front of Shinryu's house. It is just talk. But this... Chu Xinghe broke out in cold sweat. This poison, can it work? Are you referring to the Kelowna Shinryu? Gongsun Shiyu said directly. Chu Xinghe was silent. The other clan leaders were also silent. It was only now that they realized how terrifying Lord Gongsun was. The Shinryu is immortal. Gongsun Shiyu said calmly. Even if there's a power that can destroy her, it will only destroy this generation's Shinryu. As long as Kelowna still exists, the Shinryu will be reborn. This way, if we use this poison to slaughter the people at the summit, we will definitely fall out with the Shinryu. This will only push the four spirit clans into a dangerous situation. Gongsun Shiyu smiled and said, the Shinryu's rebirth need to process. I think that before the Shinryu is reborn, if you can overthrow the humans and turn the situation around completely, then even if the Shinryu returns as the protector of Kelowna, she can't say anything. Don't tell me she wants to personally kill the demon clan that has returned to the throne of Kelowna? What if this attack can't destroy the Shinryu? What if the Shinryu escapes? Once she leaves the city, she will immediately become the invincible Kelowna Shinryu. Gongsun Shiyu said slowly. Then let's make sure she can't leave the city before the situation is settled. You mean? Ming Tushan's eyes were filled with shock, and he couldn't help but stand up. Gongsun Shiyu pressed on the table and stood up as well. Don't you think that this forbidden city is like a natural cage? Is it a prison that should be used to imprison the long Shiruo? They were completely shocked by Gongsun Shiyu's crazy idea. Even Song Jinshui, who claimed to be at odds with the agency, felt cold in his hands and feet. Kill or imprison the current Kelowna Shinryu. This idea was too crazy. They were already used to it, and even believed that the Kelowna Shinryu was undefeatable. You were the heavenly pride of Xianyuan Palace. Ming Tushan took a deep breath. You are the descendant of the Yellow Emperor. Why are you on the Demon Clan side? Gongsun Shiyu smiled faintly and said, I can only tell you my objective after you've decided whether you want to work with me or not. However, I can guarantee that I didn't lie to you about the Demon Clan fighting against the humans. Think carefully, opportunity waits for no one. You're already standing on the edge of cliff. Gongsun Shiyu left, and no one knew when he left. Regarding this, the four great races could only look at the metal ball that Gongsun Shiyu didn't take with him. For now, no one dared to pick up the metal ball. Old Ming, you're the one with the most evil ideas here. Song Jinshui frowned. What is Gongsun Shiyu's purpose? Can you see it clearly? Am I the one with the most evil ideas? Black Tortoise Ming Tushan rolled his eyes. I'm only a few years older. In the Black Tortoise clan, I'm still a child. Only someone as shameless as him would be able to say such words. I think so. The acting patriarch of the White Tiger clan stood up at this time. Under the gazes of the other three patriarchs, he directly picked up the metal ball. Since everyone's opinions haven't reached a consensus, then each of you should go back and properly consider it. This thing, I'll take care of it for you. If this thing is really as scary as Gongsun Shiyu said, I'm afraid it won't be appropriate for you to take care of it. Chu Xinghe said faintly. In the end, you're only here as a substitute for Huang Baifu. Then I'll leave it to Great Priest Chu. The acting clan leader chuckled and threw the metal ball over. He would catch it. For something that was thrown at him, it was almost an instinctive action. Seeing that Chu Xinghe was forced to catch the metal ball, the acting clan leader said faintly, Then, I'll take my leave. The White Tiger clan's intention is to advance and retreat together with the other races. The decision you all come up with is our White Tiger's decision. Advance and retreat together? Easy for you to say. Chu Xinghe laughed coldly. However, the acting clan leader had already left. The remaining three clan leaders stared at each other, but couldn't say anything. Then, I'll take care of this thing for now. Chu Xinghe thought for a while and said, Today's meeting is over. Although the official meeting will start tomorrow, this meeting won't last for just one day. Let's think about what Gongsun Shiyu said. Song Jinshui flicked his sleeves and left. Chu Xinghe said goodbye to Ming Tushan and left with the metal ball. Ming Tushan stayed in the meeting room alone. No matter how he sat, he felt uncomfortable. He sighed. It's really unheard of to be able to accomplish great things with so many ulterior motives. The old Black Tortoise leaned on his walking stick and shook his head as he left. At noon, in one of the guest houses that the administration had temporarily conscripted, at the entrance, there was an unusually tall and sturdy man. He was currently looking straight ahead as he stood on guard. After a while, a young man carrying a bag came in front of the burly man. He patted him on the shoulder and said, Wang Hu, it's time to eat. Take a rest first. Okay. A burly man. Wang Hu nodded at this time and looked at his companion, Bu Gao, with a smile on his face. They found a place outside the door and sat down. The food was a working meal, a very ordinary lunchbox. You should eat more. Bugao directly took half of the white rice in his lunchbox and put it into Wang Hu's box. Look at your figure. They're just right. I can't even take one more. It's okay. I'm not very hungry. Wang Hu shook his head. Bugao said indignantly as he ate. They're really too much. We're such an excellent team of agents and logistical support. Why do they only give us the job of guarding the door? It's simply a waste of talent. If it were up to me, they should send us to receive diplomatic missions from various countries. Wang Hu just listened like that. From a long time ago, he had already gotten used to Bugao's nagging. He felt that it was very annoying. However, after listening to a lot, he slowly got used to it. All right, Wang Hu, have you made any acquaintances these days? Bugao suddenly asked. Wang Hu stopped and looked at him, puzzled. Bugao continued, look at me. Haven't a lot of demons come to this city recently? Among so many demons, don't you know one or two of them, or know you? Wang Hu shook his head and said indifferently, I've been standing guard here. I haven't seen any acquaintances. You still can't remember the past? Bugao asked. Wang Hu shook his head. Bugao suddenly patted Wang Hu on the shoulder and said, don't worry. You'll remember eventually. Maybe your family and friends are also looking for you. They just haven't found this place yet. I hope so. Wang Hu smiled casually and began to eat with a spoon. However, he only had one arm left. It was inconvenient. Let me do it. Bugao wiped the grease at the corner of his mouth and took the chopsticks and plastic spoon. He nagged, look, you only have one arm left. It's inconvenient to do anything. If everyone around you takes care of you, I'm afraid you won't have a good life. Unexpectedly, Wang Hu suddenly pressed down on Bugao's head and forced it between his legs. F***CK. Old Wang, I'm just taking care of you out of morality. Don't have any strange thoughts. I don't want to open the door to a new world. Boom! The door of the guest house exploded violently in an instant. The broken stone splashed, but Wang Hu directly covered Bugao with his body, blocking all of them.